Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone's off to a great start to their day so far. We have another really fun show coming your way today. Lots to unpack, lots to cover. Part one of today's show, we're talking about the Brendan Sorbsy decision. Obviously, that's been a big talking point so far this offseason. He is elected to go to the NFL supplemental draft. So we're going to talk about basically the order of operations of things, of how we've gotten here, why the change, where do we go from here? And then in part two of today's show, we're going to be talking about the 2025 recruiting class. We've already previewed and really given a broken down analysis of the 23 and the 24 class. Today, we're talking the 25 recruiting class. Then in part three of today's show, we're going to kick off a series where we stack up Notre Dame versus other conferences. And then up first is the ACC, a conference that Notre Dame has that deal with. And we're going to be talking about how Notre Dame stacks up with the top teams from a coaching standpoint, talent, coaching staff, position groups. It's going to be a really fun conversation. And then we're wrapping up today with the daily mailbag. So be sure to get those questions in throughout the show. Preference of questions geared towards the topic we have covered today. So MB for mailbag, mailbox emoji. We are going to have one of those. But Brian, loaded show today, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be a lot of fun, Trev. A lot of things going on. Obviously, college football, a lot of things going on with Irish Breakdown. Some things you guys are seeing, some things we're working on behind the scenes that we're very excited about. But obviously, today's topic is going to be some interesting ones. I think that the Brendan Sorbsy conversation will be certainly fascinating and just a wild twist and turns that it has taken. Big year for the 25 class, which is odd to say that about rising sophomores. And then we're going to have some fun. The Miami fans is going to brace y'all for this. You're probably going to be mad at us at the end of the show, but we're going to start a series where we kind of compare Notre Dame's coaching, roster, talent, all this kind of stuff to the top teams in conferences. And so one thing we were asked to do is like, could you compare Notre Dame to like Oregon and compare Notre Dame to Ohio State? And the reality is like, in order to do that, that would be like a ton of different shows. And we're barely going to fit in the stuff that we have planned this summer into the summer schedule. So we thought, it'd be kind of fun to kind of compare, see how Notre Dame stacks up against the top teams in the various conferences. We'll do ACC today, SEC next week, and then the Big Ten the week after that. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with the Big 12. So going to be an interesting conversation that can be debated. You guys can debate with us on where Notre Dame ranks. You guys can debate with us on, is that really one of the best teams in the conference? What about this team? It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. And we want to hear your guys' thoughts, especially like on the Brendan Sorbsy stuff. We want to hear your thoughts on the 25 recruits. And we want to hear your thoughts on our comparison of the Notre Dame roster, whether you agree with us or don't agree with us. All we ask is that if you're going to disagree with us, just make a point, right? Like just say, hey, listen, I think Miami should be this, or I think Clemson should be that. And that's fair. It's totally fine. That's part of the fun. But just make an argument. Don't just say, no, you're wrong. Just, okay, cool. Tell us why. Let's have that debate. Because if you make a good point, we may bring it up the show and address it. It's a good point. Like, hey, this is a valid point. And then respond to it. Maybe you changed our mind, or maybe you have at least you can disagree with this, but you have a better understanding of why we have it ranked where we do. So I'm very much looking forward to today's show, Travis. It's going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to getting some of the feedback from the chat about what they think about some of these topics. So it's going to be a fascinating day.
Let's dive into it head first then, man. Let's talk about this Brendan Sorbsy news. There's been a lot of talk so far this offseason because of the gambling scandal that came out about him and all of the things that he was doing, placing bets against his own team when he was at Indiana. Was he going to play for Texas Tech this year? Cody Campbell gave him upwards of $5 million to come to Texas Tech. And so there's a lot of questions on if he was going to be eligible for this season. There was the court ruling, and then yesterday it was announced that he was going to declare for the NFL supplemental draft. And it was a long, long journey to get to this point, man. That's for sure.
The whole thing is just, look, when you look at kind of how this all went down, Trev, there are so many different layers to this conversation. So many different layers that kind of show just one of the many problems that exist in college football right now. But more than anything else, what this showed is that two things. This is a big reason why there needs to be a congressional act. All the people that want to cry and complain about, oh, Congress shouldn't be doing this and Congress shouldn't be doing that. You're not going to meet very many small government people than me that aren't either anarchists or just so libertarian that you're just like, dude, you want no rule of law. I mean, like, but at the same time, we have to understand that there is a role for government. And this is a perfect example. You've got Division I football programs or Division I sports programs in, I think, 49 of the 50 states. I think Alaska Anchorage is a Division II team. Remember they used to have the Anchorage shootout or the tournament in basketball tournament, and I believe they're a Division II team. But you have NCAA schools in all 50 states. And what you're having and what we've seen the last couple of years, and this is the most egregious of all of them, is you get some local judge that can create just havoc. And we've seen a lot of these things in the past, Trev, about eligibility and NIL, and some of those things were like somewhat understandable, but they're getting so out of hand. This is the final tipping point. It kind of began a little bit with the Alabama judge declaring the professional basketball player, eligible to play in college, which was insane. And then you have this. And to me, what those two rulings did, and especially this one, is basically said the NCAA cannot enforce a single rule. Not a one. Because if you can't even have basic eligibility rules and basic common sense, hey, you can't bet on sports. You especially can't bet on the sport you play. And the most egregious sin is betting on your team. I'm a big Pete Rose fan. I've argued that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because Pete Rose was a great player based on what he did. But you know what also I said? Pete Rose should never be allowed to work in Major League Baseball again because of what he did. And so that's like the most common sense thing that we've ever known. And even that gets thrown out so that a kid can play football and generate revenue to the football team. Like, what are we doing here? But, that's kind of the big picture. But let's kind of go through how this all went down, because I got some things to say about Texas Tech, because they're trying to take the high road now, and I'm not standing for that. And this isn't over, because the injunction basically is going to get the lawsuit will get removed, but the injunction is still law. I mean, it's still a decision that is there that now won't be appealed. So the next kid that gets busted with this is just going to say, hold on a second. This law down here in Texas is still, this decision is still out there. You can't do anything. And then we're back at this again. This is exactly why you need some sort of congressional movement, because you can't continue to allow rogue judges to basically say, well, this is what's best for the schools in my state, so we're going to do this. The whole thing is just incredibly frustrating, but also fascinating. So how do we get here? Gosh, it seems like forever ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. Brendan Sorbsby a report comes out that Brendan Sorbsby had placed, I think, over 9,000 bets on sports, including betting on his own sport, college football, and his own team. Even worse, while there's no evidence he bet against his team, so like any kind of straight up winning and losing, they're going to lose a game, he bet on unders at times. Well, there's no evidence he had insider knowledge. You don't think the guy that has watched film all week and knows the game plan and knows what they're going to do doesn't have some sort of inside knowledge that, hey, we're not going to throw the ball that much this week or effectively against this team, so I'm betting the under on pass yards, which he did. It's not a made-up hypothetical. He did. He bet the under on points. That's the same to me as basically betting against your team. So he gets suspended by the NCAA. Everybody knows this. So then Brendan Sorsby sues the NCAA. And it goes to a judge. And we're all thinking, there's no way that someone's going to actually rule him eligible, right? I mean, and if he does, no problem. It'll get dealt with pretty quickly. Well, the judge rules in his favor and puts an injunction on the NCAA. Then sets the case for February intentionally. He knew what he was doing. Sets it for February 8th, which basically is after the college football season is over with. which means the NCAA can't do anything. Now, they can go through an appeals process, but having read a couple – now, a lot of things that we're going to talk about the legal case are us sharing with you things we've read from other legal experts. These are not necessarily our original ideas. But from what I read from a lot of different people that practice law in Texas, it's not a given that the NCAA is going to be able to get this appealed before that February deadline. And so he basically said the NCAA can't suspend this kid beyond 2 games because they essentially said it would hurt him financially. So the judge did rule on his eligibility. Somebody in the chat said they did. Yes, he did, because he said you can't ban him. He's suspended after 2 games. You can't take any further action because you're limiting his ability to do this. So yes, they absolutely did rule as an eligibility. If they didn't rule on his eligibility, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So you can play whatever word games you want to play. They absolutely ruled on his eligibility. So then days later, the Attorney General from the state of Texas, Ken Paxton, releases a statement threatening the NCAA, the Big 12, and anybody else that was involved in this, saying don't even think about suing because we will come after you. Don't even think about doing anything against Texas Tech, because there was a lot of talk about teams aren't going to schedule Texas Tech. Teams aren't going to, they're going to drop games against Texas Tech. And he basically said, hey, anybody comes at it, we're going to come at you. And that, Trev, is really what set off the next round of action. And that's where it got really interesting.
Yeah, once Texas Tech kind of went on the offensive and the Attorney General started getting involved, that's when this thing really started to pick up a lot of heat, really started to pick up a lot of steam, because then you weren't even talking about the impact financially for you weren't even talking about the impact financially for just Brendan Sorbsby as an individual. You started getting into what would have happened to Texas Tech, started to generate the movement to ban Texas Tech away from playing other sports. Other sports were willing to boycott Texas Tech. You started to see the financial impact there. But really from, 5 days ago up until now, stuff started to get real active around Texas Tech. It started to get pretty crazy.
So what happens, I think it's Sunday night, the Attorney General in Oklahoma and the Big 12, the Big 12 filed Sunday night. And then I believe that same day, the Attorney General in Oklahoma also releases a statement saying, yeah, we're pushing back on this. And then I believe the attorneys general from, I think, Kansas and Utah also got involved and said, yeah, we're going to have the back of this. And so they filed in, I think, northern Texas, I believe is where it's filed, in the Irving area, I believe is where they filed that, because Big 12, whatever, that's the jurisdiction for the Big 12. I read some comments from Tom Mars, who's a famous sports attorney, and I read a couple other articles, Trevor. The filing from the Big 12 was, I believe, the thing that caused this to go. The fascinating part is I read 3 different lawyers' responses to this, basically saying by Ken Paxton sending out that threatening letter, he opened up a pathway for the Big 12. He gave the Big 12 and these attorneys general basically a pathway to say, now we can really come at you because of this letter. And reading through some of that stuff, Trev, and some of it's a little bit over my head, but that opened up a pathway. So then not only did they sue Texas Tech, but then they also went after Ken Paxton. And so I'll read you this paragraph from a Yahoo Sports article by Ross Dellinger. He said, in this landmark case, so on Monday, the conference filed a 47-page complaint against Texas Tech, the Texas Attorney General, the system's chancellor, the school president, and athletic director in seeking declaratory judgment and a preliminary injunction to enable it to enforce its bylaws. In this landmark case, a league filing legally against one of its members, the Big 12 is asking a federal court to bar Texas Tech and the state's attorney general, Ken Paxton, from preventing the conference from exercising its right under its bylaws to sanction Texas Tech, according to the complaint obtained by Yahoo Sports, which is filed in the Northern District of Texas in Dallas. The league is not seeking damages in the filing and is not challenging a state court ruling deeming Sorsby eligible, but is instead asking a federal judge to permit it to take action against the Red Raiders in light of legal threats made from the Texas Attorney General, whose letter to the league last week seems to have triggered the Big 12's filing. The letter from Paxton's office demanded that the league refrain from exercising its governance authority, characterizing any sanction as an antitrust violation and threatening joint liability against the conference. And this is the last part. Perhaps most notably, the complaint lays out the conference's intention to sanction Texas Tech if it were to play Sorsby, who is acknowledged to betting on his own team while a freshman in Indiana, violating one of the sport's most sacred policies. It says, according to the Big 12 conference officials, university presidents, and athletic directors have requested that Texas Tech not play Sorsby, but Texas Tech has not agreed. So what this is interesting is this is an end around the ruling that was made in Texas, essentially saying, okay, this judge is going to rule in favor of Brendan Sorbsy. And what Texas Tech kept saying was, hey, we had nothing to do with that. That we weren't part of the lawsuit. Cody Campbell keeps saying this nonsense. We were not part of the lawsuit. We're just going by the rule. The judge says he's eligible, so he's eligible. Because for somebody that says the judge didn't rule on the eligibility, going into the court case, was Brendan Sorsby ineligible per the NCAA? Yes or no, Trev? Coming out of this court case, was Brendan Sorsby eligible for the 2026 season? Yeah. After 2 games, yes.
Yeah.
So we play word games all we want. The ruling made him eligible. It said the NCAA can't enforce this rule, correct?
Correct.
So it put an injunction on the suspension, which it makes him eligible. So Texas Tech kept saying, hey, kept hiding behind, well, we didn't have anything to do with that. We haven't anything to do with that. We haven't to do with that. We're just following the law. So then you start hearing rumblings from Big 12 people saying, hey, we're then going to go at Texas Tech. They're not going to be eligible for the Big 12 championship. We're going to sanction them money, all these other kind of things. And so then coming out of it, it basically you go from the 15th, you have all these filings, to later that day, Brendan Sorsby says, no mas. Texas Tech is going to they're going to let him have all the money they've paid him. They're not going to go after it, which is called negotiation. He's going to go to the supplemental draft, and then they release all these self-serving messages to come out. So Big 12 sues Texas Tech and Paxton. NCAA also appealed the expedited resolution. And so then that's when we see the mutual parting of ways. So all at once, within 24 hours, you have the Big 12 file suit, state attorneys general or attorney generals, I'm not sure which one it is, and then the NCAA asked for an expedited case. I think made Brendan Sorsby realize this isn't going away. It made Texas Tech realize this isn't going away. And I think they were surprised at how much everyone was against them. And I think that they thought they could kind of bully people, and they realized, yeah, this isn't going to go the way that we want it to go.
Yeah, that's 100% what happened. They were hoping that after he was ruled eligible to play, that everybody was just going to kind of roll over and accept it. And then there was a large contingent of people that were willing to push back and go to the mattresses to make sure that Texas Tech or Brendan Sorsby in one way or another faced some sort of repercussion for this action. And then once that happened and once that came to light, Brendan Sorsby was like, yeah, I think I'm going to just wash my hands of this and try my luck in the league. What can't happen, though, is now that he's declared for this to happen and Texas Tech agreed to give him his money, which is, let's be real, it's a bribe. It's, hey, how about you don't talk to people about what our involvement was in this, because we just spent the last week and a half telling people that we were just not involved. Like, that's what this was. That's what that was, letting him keep all of his NIL money. And Cody Campbell wanted to be like, yeah, you could just keep that $4.5 million that I gave you if you just kind of don't talk about this anymore. That's what it was.
Yep. Here's the thing that really kind of ticked me off from the standpoint of Cody Campbell. he has lost a lot of goodwill, in my opinion, with people who were otherwise on his side for certain things. He releases this statement, and it's a very self-serving statement, you know? And it's, we were just looking out for the student athlete. We were just following the rules. No, you weren't. Because the injunction, right? There's a lot of people want to play word games in the chat. The injunction said what? The NCAA can't rule him ineligible. Did the injunction, and I'm asking, did the injunction say that Texas Tech has to play him? No. Did the injunction say that you should threaten anyone who comes at you saying this isn't right, we need to enforce the rules? No. Did the injunction say that you as an institution can bypass a contract you've signed with your league, giving the league full discretion to determine players eligible or not, or sanctioned or not? Did the injunction say that you have to fight that? No, it did not. Those were all choices that you made. An institution that, by the way, was one of the loudest in the Big 12 at pushing back against the rule that was passed that allowed student athletes to bet on sports. Remember that? These same people were saying that and say, well, Cody Campbell, it's the sports in chaos. Well, now you're part of the chaos, Cody. And you're causing more chaos with this than anything else. You guys could have stepped up at Texas Tech and done the right thing and said, hey, we know this judge did this, but we can in good conscience focus on that. And the reality is we're working on Brendan Sorbsy's mental health. We're going to help him through that. And we don't think playing football in this environment with all the backlash is good for him. You could have said all that. He had the audacity to say this in his self-serving statement. This is word for word. The bottom line is that Texas Tech did absolutely nothing but act with complete integrity through this entire process. He literally said that in his release. I repeat, the bottom line is Texas Tech did absolutely nothing but act with complete integrity through this entire process. And I'll say this about him, Trev, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Somebody, I can't remember who wrote it. I read a tweet today. And the tweet said this: Cody Campbell is someone who on one side is fighting for positive change in college football, and on the other side is a big donor to Texas Tech. And the guy that won out in this battle of you got the good angel and the bad angel on your shoulder, right? And the Texas Tech homer part is the bad angel, and the, hey, I want to fix college football is the good angel. And when it came down to, do I do what's right for the game? That's something we all know to be right for the game, or do I do what's right for Texas Tech and my pocketbook? Because if Texas Tech is good, that helps my pocketbook. And that bad angel won. And in a lot of ways, it undermined a lot of the other things he's doing. And that's the sad part. He's fighting for a lot of good things, but you kind of destroyed your credibility in the eyes of a lot of people, including me, by not only supporting Brendan Sorsby's ability to play, but then to be nasty in how you push back on people the way that you did. There was no, hey, listen, I understand where people are coming from, guys. I get it. If this was happening in another school, we'd be upset too. But the reality is, and this is where the spin comes. The injunction was placed. We don't want to risk ourselves to a lawsuit if we're the ones that deem him eligible. I mean, it's all lies, but you could have said that. And your aggressiveness, here's where I think Texas Tech made a play. I think they looked at the nature of college football right now and the fact that the NCAA is like over. And we're in this pro player environment where it's like no matter what the players do, a lot of people are just gonna be like, no, I support the players. I'm pro player and whatever. NCAA sucks and all this. And this is the one thing that crossed the line. And I think they misjudged how loud people were going to be about this particular subject. And I think they thought that it would die down quickly and people would move on, because let's be real about something, folks. We have about a 48 hours time, attention span in this country, and that's for big things. I think they thought this was going to die down, but it got louder and louder and louder. I think that's a big part. And I think the second part is, I think Cody Campbell thought that he could call Ken Paxton, get Ken Paxton to threaten a lawsuit. Ken Paxton just won a big election in the state of Texas, wiped out John Cornyn, who's been like a 20-plus year Republican senator from the state of Texas, wiped him out like 60-something% to 30% in the primary. Clearly, there's some momentum behind Ken Paxton. He's fought a lot of good fights for people on his side. He's fought a lot of good fights that people support. There's people that don't like him, and that's a political debate. But the point is, in Texas, he just won over 60% of the Republican primary voters in a pretty Republican state. He thought he could kind of get him to back him, and hey, this is what we're going to go do. I don't think they thought that. I thought they thought that the Big 12 and the other conferences would punk out like everybody does every other time something like this happened. And the Big 12 stepped up and said, nope, not going to happen. So you know what? I give Brett Yormark and I give the Big 12 as a conference a lot of crap. But they were the first major institution to step up and say, we're not going to take this line down. We're going to fight for what's right in this instance, whatever their motivations are. And that lawsuit that they countered with, according to what I've read about 5 different articles from legal people, they said this was a devastating filing. Now, I'm not telling you that I believe that, because I don't know. I'm like 5 pages in and I'm like, I have no idea what any of this means, right? But reading people that understand it, they say it was devastating, and that Texas Tech knew they were cooked with that filing. I'm a little surprised they were surprised by that, but I think that's a big part of it.
I think where the majority of Cody Campbell's pushback comes from is he finally met the first thing probably in a very long time that he just can't overcome with money. I mean, that's we could be real about that. There are some people that are like shocked that Cody Campbell ended up on this side. I am not. I'm also somebody, window behind the curtain with me. It's very hard for me to trust people. And so, no, I'm not shocked that somebody who's willing to pay tens of millions of dollars every year for their favorite college football team to be good erred on the side of money. That is not a shock to me. Like, you want what's good for the sport if it also then benefits the team that you're giving $35 to $40 million to every single year. In no way is that a surprise to me whatsoever. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to say I don't care about it because it doesn't surprise me. But honestly, shout out to the Big 10 or Big 12 for willing to take a stance on this, because this was something that very easily could have been brushed under the rug, and I'm glad that it wasn't.
Here's a comment from Insured by Big. PR lesson 101. Just shut up and don't speak on the matter. It will die down. Now, do I think that this would have just gone away had they shut up? I don't know, because they didn't. I'd like to think, no, we would have all stayed focused on this and we would have all still, but I don't know. We don't know. But to his point, every time they release some stupid response, it just got people more and more mad. It's like they come up with that hostage video of the leadership of the school trying to explain away why they're doing this.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, stop. Shut up. Like, if you want to get away with this, shut up. And then when they got the attorney general involved, that just put everything in overdrive. So again, Big, I don't know what would have happened, Big. I don't know that we would have all just moved on. I have no idea. But to your point, they had a better shot of it going away by shutting up than by constantly releasing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like they opened up this door. So, and Big said he's not saying it would have gone away. I'm not saying you are. What I'm saying is I'm giving you my thoughts in response to what you said. I don't know if this would have gone away. I'm not saying you said it. I'm saying it. I don't know if it would have gone away because we have a very short attention span as a country. What I'm saying is they guaranteed that it's not going to go away. Their responses and just statement after statement, and Joey O'Brien, Joey McGuire, well, he didn't murder anyone, he didn't beat anyone, and then they do this hostage video, and then they do this, and Cody Campbell won't shut up. And it's like Kirby Hocutt, don't even get me started on that guy. The more you talked, the more you kept it in the news, and the more ticked off you made us all. And that's where I'm saying, like, I'm with you on that at Big. I'm not saying you're saying that it would have gone away. Maybe it would have, though. That's my point. Maybe it would have gone away. Maybe people would just be like, well, it sucks, but this is where we are, and that's why we need. And then now we're back to talking about the Cruz Cantwell thing, and we're back to that, and we're having these conversations, and then we're just waiting on the NCAA's appeal to have it expedited, and we're sitting back waiting. And then Texas Tech can somewhat take the high road. Hey, we're just following the injunction, but they just kept releasing ignorant statement after ignorant statement and just kept people engaged. You kept it in the news, and you made sure that it wasn't going to go away. And that's where I think Big and I agree is like the more they talked about it, the worse it got for them. And then once you got Ken Paxton involved, I really think that they thought that this was going to just go away. Or that people were going to get punked out, and they didn't. They pushed back hard.
When you were like a little kid, and you would get caught in a lie, or you got caught doing something that you weren't supposed to, and you kept giving excuse after excuse of why you did it, and then you came up with the reason for why you came up with the excuse, and then you came up for the reason of why you came up for the reason for why you came up with the excuse.
We did that. We only did that when we were kids. Yeah, sure, Trev. Yeah, when I was a kid. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Never done that with my wife. Never.
No, never. Not us. Not these two guys. Never. But that's what Texas Tech did. To the point where the rest of the Big 12 and Brent Urmack and the rest of college football kept going, yeah, uh-huh. Oh, you had nothing to do with it, huh? Oh, really? That's why you had nothing to do with it? What's the recourse? Oh, he keeps all of his money, and now we're going to act like nothing ever happened. All right. And that's the biggest thing. Yeah. They got caught. That's what it was.
Yeah. I understand the decision to have a move on. But I think that they're still expecting it to go away, and I don't think it's going to go away the way they think it's going to go away. As we kind of wrap this segment up, I think that all the people talking about not playing Texas Tech, you should keep that energy. Just because they've done this, they didn't do this for righteous reasons. They did this for practical reasons. So if Notre Dame was talking to Texas Tech about playing them before, and I said I will not support Notre Dame playing them, I still feel that way. This doesn't change that. They still need to feel the heat for this decision. You brought this on yourselves. And Cody Campbell said, we did a background check on Brendan Sorsby. Bullcrap. Then you did a terrible one. Because Cincinnati knew about this, and I want to comment on Cincinnati at some point in time here real quickly as well, Trev. There are so the reason that you know the reason this all came to light, right? I think the NCAA was tipped off by the FBI. The FBI alerted the NCAA to, hey, by the way, we're investigating this quarterback for breaking the law. That's the whole thing. This isn't just some guy that had an addiction that was, on FanDuel too much or whatever. This is a guy that broke the law in 2 states. And not law as in like you can't gamble unless you're X years old. He was using fake names and fake accounts and all these other kind of stuff to gamble, among other things. And that's how it got alerted. So you're telling me that Cincinnati knew, and basically the accusation is that Cincinnati knew this. And I'm curious to see kind of how that's going to go. I'm trying to find the article that talked about that, this from a Cincinnati standpoint, but Cincinnati knew this and still played him. I'm going to try to find the report. There was a news report that I believe Yahoo shared that stated that this is something that was known. And so you're telling me Texas Tech did a quote unquote thorough investigation, but didn't know what Cincinnati found out? What kind of thorough investigation did you do that made it to where you had no clue that a kid had this kind of gambling problem. And his whole time at Texas Tech, he's been here since January. Nothing from you. A guy that's that degenerate of a gambler and you had no idea. But yet we're to believe you did a background search. So they don't get off here, in my opinion, at all. They don't get off here at all.
At least they shouldn't.
Yeah. Neither should Cincinnati. Like, they should be next. Like, what's the Big 12 now going to do with Cincinnati? You guys played now listen, first of all, the Big 12 has to be careful with Cincinnati because you have to have evidence that they knew. There's an accusation that they knew, but you have to have evidence that they knew. The reason I'm like, go after Texas Tech is because Brendan Sorbsy's admitted what he's admitted as far as what he's done. The Cincinnati knew thing is an accusation. There's a difference. No one's accusing Brendan Sorsby of gambling. We all know he did because he's admitted everything he's accused of doing, basically, he's admitted to. It's just hiding behind, I have an addiction. He very may well have an addiction. And if he does, I'm sympathetic to that. I've seen that destroy family. I have an uncle who I adore who lost his house and his business and his marriage a lot because of a gambling problem. So I'm sympathetic to that. But having an addiction doesn't mean you don't face consequences for the things that you do. Because at the end of the day, unless you have an addiction that was started because somebody did something to you, you have a drug addiction because someone forced drugs into your system. You have a drinking problem because someone forced drugs into their system. I've heard stories about babies born with drug addiction because their mothers were on drugs when they were born, right? I mean, we all have to be understanding of, hey, this isn't something that was necessarily a choice. This was something that was a bad situation caused this. You know, a woman who suffers an abusive situation that has some mental issues or goes to drinking to get out of because of this. Okay, I'm sympathetic to that. Like this isn't something you just chose to do because it was a Tuesday. Someone who develops a drinking problem, I'm sympathetic to that. Let's get you some help. I'm not a big fan of jailing people for doing drugs. I want to help those people find, the ability to, let's get you through that. Let's get you past that. Let's make you a productive citizen again. And I don't know the jail does that, right? We could have this conversation, but it doesn't mean you don't have to suffer consequences for your actions. Let's help Brendan Sorsby get over. He's clearly, I have never said he doesn't have a gambling problem. I can't fathom someone placing that many bets and just saying it's just normal. That's a gambling problem. Let's help the young man with that. Let's pray for the young man while he sits out this entire season for football. That's where we should be at. But kudos to the Big 12, who doesn't really do a lot of things right, in my opinion. Stepped up big and really, I think, won a big victory for the sport. The concern, however, is, Trev, the Big 12 did this, but that injunction, I believe, now this is where people in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. Big, you and I have disagreed in this chat. You maybe can help me with this one. The lawyer Kessler said they're removing the suit, but I've seen other people say that the injunction is still there. So I'm not sure how that works. Because Kessler said they're withdrawing it. It's moot, but the decision has already been made. Does that stand? Is that still there? So like if Baylor has a kid they find us gambling, can they not suspend him now? And I'm curious about that. That's kind of where I'm at with this. There's still a problem, and it's further evidence that we need some sort of congressional relief.
100%.
Big said that it's lawsuit and jurisdiction specific. So if another Texas Tech player gets caught for gambling and Texas Tech doesn't want to suspend him, would it not stand since it's jurisdiction, even though it's a different suit, or does it have to be both? That's what I don't know. So again, but there's still precedent that was set by a judge saying, hey, and it was never overturned. It was never appealed, and it was never overturned on appeal or whatever, however that works. That's what I'm curious about. And that's just more reason why something has to be done at a federal level, because you've got 50 different states. He said the process starts over. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. But the reality is, Trevor, one of the great things about our nation is that we are 50 unique states, that it's the United States of America. But one of the problems is that we're 50 unique states with different rules and different laws. You know, Trev, you and I are both gun owners. You know, we both believe in the constitutional right to carry a firearm, but I can't do that if I drive across the border into Illinois.
Right.
I have to have my gun in a case, locked and all. So those things kind of create problems, but you have to understand there's different laws in different states. So when you have an entity, which is the college football, that has different, schools in different states with different laws, some are private, some are public, there has to be something that governs all of them. And the reality is you have too many lawyers and too many attorneys general and too many governors that get involved in their school's business. That's what's best for them. That isn't best for everybody else, which is why we're here. And I'm glad at least this, I'm glad we don't have to deal with the next 2 months of what are they going to actually play this kid? And just that, because that is going to dominate the narrative in college football all year. The one good thing that's going to come out of this that I think we can say with certainty is, from a college football narrative standpoint, this is not going to be the dominant narrative throughout the season like it would have if Texas Tech played him and kept winning.
Yeah. That's where I'm at with this one too, man. I'm very interested to see what the follow-up is here. Is there some sort of amendment to, I guess you can't really amendment, maybe in addition to the Protect College Sports Act for this, to give one governing document to give states power to make rulings on gambling? I don't know what the follow-up is here, but I am very much with you in that I'm happy that we don't have to keep having this conversation of should they play him, will they play him, how crazy is this going to be for college football? I'm happy that we can now turn that page and actually talk about football, not the intricacies of the game of what is morally right and what is morally wrong for who's going to play. That I'm happy that we can start to put behind us.
Absolutely.
Brian, let's pivot and talk some Notre Dame football here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And one thing that we've done this offseason is we've broken down the 2023 recruiting class who's going into their senior year. Still crazy to say that. Mm-hmm. And the 2024 recruiting class is now going into their junior year. It is now time to talk about the 2025 recruiting class and really give an analysis overall. And fact of the matter is, Brian, is this class is entering a very crucial season, even though it's just their second year in college football. Yeah. Very interested to see what this class does this year.
It's an incredibly unfair thing to say that this class enters a bit of a do or die season as a whole. There's individual players that are not in that situation, but as a whole, if this class is going to have an impact as an entire class, the way that the 23 class is, the way the 24 class is. I mean, you're going to have more 23 starters this year than 24 starters, but most of the All-American candidates are from the 24 class. You know, I mean, you think about Tay and Leonard Moore and CJ Carr and Kirby Lambert and Anthony Knapp and guys like that. It's like, the Kingston Viliama Asa. I think Drake Bowen is like the only non-2024 kid I've seen projected into the NFL draft. Who am I missing? None of the tight ends. The only two linemen are Knapp and Lambert, the quarterback CJ Carr. Defensively, you've got, Boubacar. Boubacar's the only one.
Boubacar, and I've seen like one who had a Don.
Okay, so like two from the 23 class, the rest are from the 24 class, right? And so those classes as a whole, when you look at it as an entire group, not individuals, as a group, are going to have a major impact on the season. The interesting thing about the 25 class, Trev, is they're entering a season where in most years, hey, you're going to have some guys play, some guys aren't, but it's okay because, this guy just needs a little bit more seasoning. The reason it's a big year for this class, and this is where it gets interesting, is this is a class that was Notre Dame's lowest ranked class, like consistently. Now, they were ranked 11th by Rivals, 12th by On3, 12th by ESPN. You know, we'll get into some of the top 50 stuff and all that. I'm just making a bigger picture point here for now. Others were like ranked 11th to 12th, but there's somebody else that I'm like 9th or 7th or whatever. This is one that was 11th or 11 and 12, and I don't know that they were wrong on this one. Like, I think that was actually kind of a fair ranking for this class. It was a class that had some great position groups in certain spots, but then others not as strong. That's part of it. The other part of it is you have the best class you signed since 1990 coming in behind it. And if the next 2 weeks go the way that we hope it does, that class is going to be followed by potentially an even better class. There's a lot of guys in the 26 class that are, I'm ready to help right now. And we felt the 26 class, the 25 DB class was their best DB class in a long time. 26 might be better. So even that group, right? The 05, the 25 offensive line class, very good. 26 might even be even better. So we're in a situation now where if this class doesn't grow up in a hurry, they run the risk of getting, in a lot of different places, getting passed up by even younger players. And that's where we are, where as a whole, if you don't grow up in a hurry, some of you are going to find yourselves getting passed over. And we've already seen, what do we count, Trev? 4 kids from this class already gone, or 3. It's Jadon Blair. You've got Cree Thomas,
Anthony Sacca.
Anthony Sacca, and I feel like, and Scrap. Richardson. 4.
Yeah.
4 guys already gone after a year, partly because they were getting kind of over-recruited and passed over. In Jadon Blair's case, it was more of by guys in his class. You know, so Cree Thomas, it was guys in his class, but also guys coming in. So that's what's interesting about this class. A lot of the other 2 classes, like, boy, they were underrated. This was, I think, a better class than maybe some people gave it credit for, but it wasn't the same as the class before. Now, maybe it could have been. This class had some drama. You had the Deuce Knight saga. We might be having a different conversation about this class if Deuce Knight doesn't leave. This class had this is the class that Chad Bowden left, like, kind of right in the middle of. And we had to deal with kind of that whole, saga. You had, the previous recruiting staff taking kids that the coaches didn't want. So when he left, the coaches said, well, we want somebody different. So you had guys getting dropped and going out. And in those cases, I think you got a better player. You got a better player, Nolan James, than you had. And I like Daniel Anderson and Justin Thurman. They're great kids. But, now you're in a situation where you went out and got a better player. So in some ways it worked out. You lost Deuce. You got a good player in Blake Hebert. But Blake Hebert's not Deuce Knight, from a ranking standpoint. So in a lot of ways, Trev, you got good receivers, but we admitted at the time there's no number 1. So there's a lot of things about this class where it was a good class that got maybe a little bit more, I don't know, I use the word hate, but a little bit more criticism than maybe it warranted. But to a degree, there was at least something behind. It's like you're too strong with your criticism. Oh, you're saying I shouldn't be critical? No. Be critical. This class has some holes, but I think you're going a little too far with some of the criticism. This guy's better than you give him credit for. That guy's better than you give him credit for. But big picture, it's more of a, okay, yeah, some of this is valid, even though we may nitpick on the degree in which you're criticizing, but it's not a typical. It was, it was a Brian Kelly class in some ways. You had some strengths, but overall there were too many misses, too many misevaluations, too many other things, and in their defense, at some positions, just not bad luck. It just wasn't. There was no Caden Henderson at linebacker in last year's class. I think those are factors as well. It was not a great running back class beyond, like, it was very top. Some really good players at the top. And then, like, I love the E.J. Crowell kid going to Alabama. I love the Amari Latimer kid. I don't know if he ended up signing with Wisconsin or not. I can't remember. I think I would go West Virginia. Some kids I loved in the class. No, those were actually 25 kids or 26 kids. So, yeah, the 25 class, I remember saying it wasn't a great running back class. Okay. But in other areas, it's like, yeah, you underachieved at that position. You had some bad evals, like not liking Dalen McCutcheon and then missing out. going hard after Derek Meadows when I kept trying to tell the staff, you're not going to get this kid. And some members of the staff were ready to move on, and then people in the recruiting office wanted to keep recruiting him. There's a lot of that stuff going on that led to this. And it's partly why there were some changes. At the end of the day, this is the class you got. There's some strong parts of it, but if this class as a whole doesn't really have a strong offseason and a strong 2026 season, they're going to find themselves getting passed up by younger players.
The obstacle for this class, and I don't envy it in any way, because I'm with you, it was overhated, but because of Notre Dame's recruiting success, I'm not willing to go to the mattresses and defend this class like I would the 23 or 24 class.
Mm-hmm.
Those were overlooked. This class, I get why. Because it's loaded with a lot of guys who are like, man, in 2 to 3 years, you could really see them come along. And they're being followed up by recruiting classes of guys that could come in and make an immediate impact. That's the interesting dichotomy with the 25 recruiting class and then the 26 recruiting class that's already on campus. Because we're already starting to see some players start to, make a push, which I think is really interesting. But that's what's tough is this class had a lot of guys in it that were like, hey, he's not going to contribute as a true freshman, but hey, once he gets into his junior year, senior year breakout, and the day and age of college football, and with the level of recruiting class that they brought in 2026, some of these guys aren't going to be able to afford to wait around until their junior or senior year to have a breakout year. So I think that's what's going to be interesting about this one, man. But I know that we have some recruiting rankings here for this class.
So, just kind of going over the class, Trev, just giving you guys some particulars. When you look at how this class stacks up with some other classes, 5-star ranking, let me pull up my breakdown here. 5-star rankings, this class only had 1 on 3, none on the others. I think there was only one other player that I thought should have been considered a 5-star, and that was Will Black. Should have been a 5-star across the board, in my opinion. You had 11 4-stars. For on 3, 11 for 247, 12 for ESPN. So you had 12 4 and 5s, 11 4 and 5s, 12 4 and 5s. Compared to, for example, the 24 class, which had 17 4 and 5s from on 3, 13 from or 17 from rivals, 13 from on 3, 11 from 247, 13 from ESPN. So less there. It was a class that had some size to it as a 25-man class. 13 of the players on 3 were 3 stars, 14 on 247, 13 on ESPN. Compare that to the 24 class that had 6 3 stars according to rivals, 10 from on 3, 12 from 24/7, who always underrates their name players, and then 10 from ESPN. You had 1 top 50 player on 3, 1 top 50 player from 247. That was Will Black. Actually, no, that was it Will Black on both of them? Give me a second here real quick. Yeah, it was Will Black on both of them. And then you had 3 top 100 players on 3 and 247, only 2 from ESPN. You had 7 top 150 players on 3, only 4 from 247, 4 from ESPN. And again, when I look at some of these rankings, I don't necessarily push hard against that. I think Elijah Burris was woefully underrated. Because 2 of the outlets had him as a 3. One had him as a 3-star, one had him as a 4-star unranked player. He should have been a 4-star top 150 to 250 player, but I've never advocated he should have been top 50 or top 100. So there's some kids like that. I thought Matty Augustine was a tad underrated based on his upside. There were some guys that I thought, I thought Ethan Long was a better player than he was given credit for. I thought Dallas Golden was way underrated. He's the one kid that I'll look at and say, that guy should have been a top 100 player. You guys missed the boat across the board. Now, on 3, in their typical we suck at evaluating linebackers process, had Matt Frame on number 146, but 247 and ESPN him as a top 100 player. Chris Burgess was a top 100 player by on 3 and 247, but in the 200s by ESPN. So you had some of those anomalies, but 2 of them got the kids right. Dallas is the one that everybody had him outside the top 100, except for the outlet that folded, Rivals. They went over to on 3, and then on 3 ranked Dallas, where on 3 had Dallas outside the top 100. He's got to be spot on. And so this was a class, Trev, where this is the one where you had a lot of I get why that guy's, where he is. Yeah, I get why that guy is where he is. And honestly, a couple of the Scrap Richardson was a consensus 4-star recruit. He's gone. Jadon Blair was a consensus 4-star recruit. He was ranked in the top 100 by on 3. He's gone. So two of your guys are already gone, and I still say Cree Thomas was woefully underrated.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Very underrated coming out of high school.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So just overall looking at rankings, Trev, I have some, okay, instead of 6, looking at it from this, instead of 7 top 150s and 4 100s, it should have been 4 100s and 6 top 150s, with Dallas Gold. It doesn't change the narrative. Like, you guys completely missed the boat not having a bunch of top 50 players, which was our argument in 23 and 25. Like, you guys woefully underrated Tay Johnson. You guys woefully underrated, on 3, CJ Carr. You guys woefully underrated these are impact guys that you guys are ranking like they're not impact guys. That wasn't the nitpick here. And so I think those are like I think Dom Hulak's a nice pickup. I think that Joe Reef's a nice pickup. I'm not going to sit there and pound the table that they should have been ranked way, way higher. I think Joe Reef probably should have been a 4-star, borderline top 250 kid. He was a 3-star, but I'm not pounding the table that this guy is a difference maker that you guys ranked wrongly. It's a good player. You underrated him, but not the way you underrated Tay Johnson by making him a 3-star when he should have been a top 100 guy. It's a little bit of a different.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's levels to how you can overrate or underrate a player. I mean, nobody had the egregious, like CJ Carr being the number 232 quarterback in that class. Matt Framo was underrated by a couple of outlets. Dallas Golden, I think, was underrated, but by and large, it's the thing that's crazy to me is you have outlets like On Three who like ranked the 2024 recruiting class as low as they did. But then obviously not all recruiting classes are created equally.
Right.
But it's just crazy seeing the 24 class on 3 being ranked like a 10th or something, and then this one is 12th. Yeah. I mean, that's where the misses have been. But specifically for this class, I get it. Because like I said, there were some players in this class that even at the time, I remember us talking about how like, hey, Scrap Richardson, he is not going to do much as a true freshman because he's learning to play the position. By the time he's a redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, we could be talking about, him being a contributor to the offense. Nature of the game now is it's tough for kids to wait till their redshirt junior season to become an impactful player. That's what's real interesting with this class.
Trev, as we kind of go through the class overall, we talk about starters and depth players. That this is where we kind of get into the fact that right now there's not a lot being asked of this class where they have to do certain things. You're in a battle for a spot. And the concern is we'll go through each of these guys, is in some instances, you're in a battle with someone who's younger than you. So when you look at, starters, there's only one redshirt freshman or true sophomore that is projected to start this year. There's only one kid from the 25 class that's projected to start, and that's Will Black at left tackle. That's a pretty good intro into the starting lineup when you've got a guy like that. But then you look at the rest of it, though. There's a lot of players that are fighting for starting jobs. I think you could say I don't think he's going to win it, but Nolan James is absolutely battling for a starting running back job. I think he's trailing Aeneas Williams. We'll see how Keydron Young does when he gets back, but he's battling. James Flanagan is battling for the starting tight end job. He's at the very least, you could call him sort of a starter with an asterisk in that he'll be the guy that's out there whenever they go 12 personnel. It's kind of a starting position when you consider how much they play. You look at Dallas Golden, if he can be healthy, is going to battle for, potentially for a starter snaps, even if he doesn't have a starting role. Then there's the depth players, guys that are battling for a role in the 2 deep. Up front, offensive line, Matty Augustine, I think you could, I don't think Matty Augustine's in a position battle per se. Notre Dame coaches talk about it, but if he keeps climbing the way he's climbed this last year, he may then find himself like, hey, Sullivan Absher, if you don't play better, dude, we might see a little bit of Matty Augustine. He's the other one that I would say is probably the next closest to being in a quote unquote position battle, like James Flanagan, that kind of thing. But then there's a lot of guys: Elijah Burris, Cam Herron, Christopher Burgess, Madden Faramo, Mark Zachary, Ethan Long, that are in a position where you guys have a shot to crack the 2 deep and then maybe play. To where if there's an injury, you can step in. Mark Zachary started it. What's funny is there's there's a chance that there's more starters from this class that played last year than maybe this year, barring injury, because obviously Dallas Golden started some games last year. Mark Zachary started 3 games last year. So I think that can be interesting, Trev, where if you look at this class, you guys are in a position to crack the 2 deep or play important roles. I think that when you look at a guy like Madden Framo, he's not in a battle to start, but he's in a battle to say, hey, I'm the future at this position, and he'll play. Like, he's in a little bit of a different category than some of the other guys we're talking about. I think there's a separation between – I'm not worried about anyone in the 26 class necessarily coming in and beating out Madden Framo. He's in a little bit of a different spot. But almost all these other guys, even the guys we love like Dallas Golden and James Flanagan. James Flanagan's a dude. I think he's a top 100 player. I think he's a great player. But you're bringing in Ian Premer, who is an even better high school prospect. If you don't take some steps and Ian comes in like we think he can, you may find yourself kind of battling. You know, when you look at you know, a guy like Matty Augustine, man, you're rolling, but you can't take a step back because you've got Tyler Merrill and Ben Nichols and Grayson McHugh and, you know, guys like that. Cam Herron, you're having to, you know, really charging after Joe Otting, but you better continue it because you've got Sullivan Garvin breathing down your neck. I think Dallas Gold's a stud. You know who else I think is a stud? Kari Adams and Aiden Pouncey. I think Ethan Long's got a chance to be a starter at Notre Dame someday. Problem is, he's not as good as Joey O'Brien. And that's the interesting thing here, Trev. Nolan James is a very talented player. You know, I was higher on Nolan James than just about anybody. As much as I love Nolan James, though, I did not grade him as high as either Javion Osborne or Jonas Walton. Love Elijah Burris. Didn't grade him as high as Caden Finley. He's a different type of player than Bubba Frazier. And I think there's guys like Devin Fitzgerald who might have more upside than him and grew up quickly. So that's when we talk about this class, Trev, is you're in a situation where if you guys don't have really good summers and fall camps and then kind of continue that during the season, there's a chance some kids from this class could get passed up pretty quickly. The flip side of that is if they do have strong off seasons and fall camp, they really solidify the depth chart and give you some potential playmakers. So we focus a lot on the negative side. There's the positive side as well, but I know you wanted to talk first about some of the concerns before we move on to the positive side of it.
Well, actually, I was going to kind of talk about that gap bridging thing where it's a double-sided coin here.
Let's do it.
Because this is also the class that kept Notre Dame from going to the portal in a lot of spots. Because you listed off players like Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary and Ethan Long. Like there was some question, maybe not internally. I don't have the sources or the intel, but there was some talk and some conversation amongst fans, at least, about like, do they look to the portal to get another safety to back up Tay and Adon? You know, do they look to go get another corner in the transfer portal? Obviously, they ended up doing that, getting Jaden Sanders and obviously DJ McKinney. But, you know, what will that portal class look like? And it's some of these players, and the coaching staff is kind of banking on some of these players playing those roles this year of transfer portal guys. You know, but that's kind of the scary side. The positive side is we've seen Dallas Golden start games. We've seen Mark Zachary start games. We watched Madden Framo get to campus extremely raw. And he was on the field, forced his way into the field by the third game. And not forced his way into the field after the game
is enormous.
Without a doubt. And he forced his way on the field, not when it was 49-20, but when it was like 7-7. And then forced an interception on his first collegiate drive in meaningful minutes. I mean, that's kind of where this class is. I don't want to use the term like no man's land. It's not like they're in place and they're just there waiting for the 26 class to emerge. But that's what makes it such a big offseason for them. But it's a big offseason in one that when we say that, Brian and I both think that they can have a big offseason. It's not like, well, if they don't have a good offseason, they're just kind of hanging out. They have to have a big offseason, and we think that they can have a big offseason. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing in fall camp, what strides Elijah Burris makes, what Madden Framo looks like when he's not handicapped by the wrist or the hand, what Dallas Golden looks like when he's healthy, what Mark Zachary – I mean, the biggest thing with Mark Zachary is, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. He shouldn't have used some of his winter workout time where he could have been putting on bulk to go play basketball. I mean, that's just – unfortunately, that's the fact of the matter. Scored a bucket. I actually watched it. But it was a decision that, hey, you should have been working on putting on some more muscle, playing stronger. For Elijah Burris, it's, hey, this is a big fall camp for you, brother. Like, it's going to be a lot of things like that. I'm excited to watch it play out.
We did focus a lot on if you don't step up, this bad thing is going to happen. But let's look at the flip side of this. And let's say that this class follows the pathway of the 24 and 23 classes where it okay, this is maybe better than what the recruiting services had it as. Not so much. The difference here again is because our ranking of this class wasn't as strong as the others. But let's say that they prove these services just as wrong. What will that look like? What will that mean? Big picture, yeah, okay, it means your team's even deeper and stronger, but let's get specific with it, right, Trev? So obviously for this class to, surpass expectations, you need your dudes to be the dudes you thought they were going to be, right? Who is that? It's Will Black. You need him to make on three look like geniuses, because I hammer them a lot for they were wrong on this guy and I was right. They got Will Black way before I did. I kept having Notre Dame fans say, hey, when are you going to change your Will Black grade? So when I get new film, I haven't seen new film. They saw him in a camp. I don't have any new film. I get it, the athleticism, but I need to see some new film. And then, of course, I saw senior film and he went from borderline 4-star to 5-star. And so you look at that and you say, hey, they did a great job there. They were the first one. I mean, when they bumped him up to a top 5-star player, I think he was still a consensus 3-star everywhere else. And I went from being dude, y'all are underrating Will Black to whoa, I can't go there with you. You know what I mean? That's kind of where it was. Give him credit for that. And you hope that they're right about that. You hope that the recruiting services are right about Christopher Burgess as being a top 100 player. He's transitioned inside. I think he is a guy that I don't think faces him. It's funny. Two of the most talented guys in this class don't have the same pressure of, if you don't show up now, you're gonna be there. Because with Madden, it's I don't care how good Madden is, the odds of him beating out Drake and Kingston and Jaden Osbury, it's going to be difficult. Even if you think that kid's a future star, just like Drake wasn't going to beat out JD Bertrand in 2023. You think Drake Bowen's eventually going to be a great player and 3-year starter and 2-time captain and all this, but he's not better than JD Bertrand was in his first year.
Right.
When Madden's a senior, he may end up being better than Drake when Drake was a senior, but he's as a sophomore, he ain't better than what Drake is as a senior. That's the point. Same with Christopher Burgess. There's a lot of veterans ahead of him, so they're not going to lose patience with Christopher. So if he doesn't play a lot this year, he'll be kind of in the Armo Mukum camp of, yeah, but we don't care. He's making a transition from end to tackle. He put on 50 pounds. There's a learning curve here, a growth curve here. But next year, when Onye's gone and Elijah Hughes is gone and, and he's a year older, and now all of a sudden that whole thing with Christopher Burgess we're having a different conversation. That may happen this year, Trev. I'm just saying, if it doesn't, you'll be a little bit more patient with him than you might be some other guys for a host of reasons, because you still know the upside is really high. Same thing with Madden Faramo. But let's say Madden and Christopher Burgess are that guy this year. What does the light going on for Chris Burgess do for the defensive line? I mean,
yeah,
when you and I are looking at our D tackle and we're thinking of how good it can be, yeah, Chris could be that, but we're thinking more Onye, Francis Brew, Tion Gray, Elijah Hughes, Armel Mukum. That's where we are. We're not really thinking too hard about you need Chris Burgess or Elijah Golden to step up and be studs. It'd be nice if it happened, but it's not a need. We think they're going to be really good without Christopher Burgess. The point, however, is if the light goes on for Christopher as he makes this transition inside, that's one of your most talented players on your entire defensive line. Same thing on the offensive line with Matty Augustine. If the light goes on, he may push a guy, and especially for Madden Faramo, hey, look, he's not better than Drake, but we're thinking we're going to play 15, 16 games. We got to figure out a way to get this kid on the field because of, and I'd say that's true of Dallas Golden. I think those 4 players, Will Black, Chris Burgess, Madden Faramo, and Anthony and Dallas Golden, along with James Flanagan, 5 guys. Those 5 guys, to me, having that breakout second year that we've seen from CJ Carr did that last year. Kingston did that last year. Leonard Moore, even more so than he did as a freshman. Tay Johnson had that breakout. Drake Bowen had that breakout the year before as a true sophomore. So, we've seen a lot of these top players in year 2 is when they make their big splash. Jaden Greathouse, kind of, even though he didn't do what we hoped he could do because he didn't get the ball thrown, the film was still very impressive in his second year. Jordan Faison, before the injury, was on the verge of a really good sophomore season. He had beat out Chris Mitchell and Jaden Harrison as a starter, and then got hurt in the first quarter of the A&M game, and he was never really healthy the entire season until you got to the postseason when he was healthy in the rest between the regular season and the postseason, and lo and behold, he's running by dudes for Indiana. So top players have these sophomore breakouts. What does Notre Dame's team look like if they're I would argue the top 5 players in this class, 5 best players in this class: Will Black, James Flanagan, Dallas Golden, Christopher Burgess, and Madden Faramo. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
If they have a similar sophomore breakout, you've just added a 6-foot-plus athletic dude to your secondary in Dallas Golden. You're now going to have a freshman All-American caliber player playing left tackle. You're going to have a 6'6", 260-pound kind of a freak because he was a great hockey player. He James Flanagan set a state record in the shot put, beat his dad's record, and was a really good hockey player. And he's your tight end. A breakout from him, now people say, I think tight ends are going to produce more. Well, he could be a reason why. Now you're looking at the future and saying, hey, man, Ian Premer's going to be a star, which is what fans are saying. Changing the conversation to how you defend Notre Dame when they've got Ian Premer and James Flanagan. Like, how do you stop that? Same thing with Christopher Burgess. If he has a breakout, if Madden has a break, now all of a sudden a team that we already think has got the most talented roster in college football, and we're not even counting on most of these guys, that you could have a big impact. And I think you could make the same case for a couple other guys, Mark Zachary, Matty Augustine, Elijah Burris, Ethan Long. But I think those top 5 guys are the first ones we look at to say, can you guys be as good as advertised? Because if they're not as good as advertised, it makes the rest of the class, it's going to be a lot harder for the rest of the class to kind of live up to expectations. Like the class as a whole is going to be hard for them to live up to expectations if the top guys don't become that.
Yeah, I put Will Black in a category of his own when I look at this because all the other players that you listed off, Notre Dame doesn't need them to necessarily break out to be the odds-in favorite to make the college football playoff outside of any other team on FanDuel. Like Notre Dame doesn't need Dallas Golden to be, to play to his ceiling as a sophomore for Notre Dame to just make the playoffs, arguably to make a run. But if they do, imagine what that run could look like. Will Black is the only player that I would contend has to have a breakout season this year because right now he's the only person who is in the starting lineup. Like, barring injury with players like Madden and Dallas, it's not in years past, like we've talked about Notre Dame's receiving corps. It's like you just need this guy to have a breakout year or you're in trouble. Notre Dame secondary is not necessarily in trouble if Dallas Golden doesn't break out. But if he does, to your point, that just elevates the room in its entirety. That's the thing that I'm most looking forward to with this one, man. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of falls they have.
I would make the case, Trev, that I do think Notre Dame needs Dallas Golden to step up because he's your next guy if there's any injuries. Like, if everybody's healthy, I agree with you. They don't really need him to step up. You've got DJ McKinney, Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Tay Johnson, Adon Schuler, but where's your depth? I think we are kind of counting on him to be one of those, hey, you're in the rotation. You're going to be a playmaker. If somebody goes down, you're stepping up either nickel or field corner. So I do think there's some importance for them from a depth standpoint. But to your point, you don't need him to step up and be a starter and a difference maker the way you needed Christian Gray to do that in 2024, another sophomore breakout player. The way if Leonard Moore doesn't have a great sophomore year, if Christian Gray don't have great sophomore years, you're in trouble. So like, I agree with your point that as starters, like, you're not making the playoffs if Christian Gray doesn't have the season he has. You're not the defense you were last year if Leonard Moore doesn't do that. You're not if CJ Carr doesn't have that breakout. If Anthony Knapp and Gerby Lambert have sophomore slumps, Notre Dame does not have the Doak Walker winner at running back. I mean, not that they were like great offensive line, but you're bad if those two guys struggle. They may not need that, but they're an injury away from now we are there. And so that's why I would say I do think they need to step up. But like some of these other guys, like Ethan Long, you don't need Ethan Long to step up. But if Ethan Long doesn't have a big jump this year, you're going to find yourself kind of being threatened by, obviously, Joey O'Brien's going to pass you up real quick if he hasn't already. And then you got Zayden Gamble and some other guys like that kind of coming down the pike. And all of a sudden, hey, here we are. People bringing up Jaden Sanders also. Reminder that when we are talking about this, we're only talking about guys that signed out of high school. So there's actually 2 sophomores that could have a big impact this year that aren't part of this conversation. That's Jaden Sanders, who my guy DJ mentioned, but also Quincy Porter, the receiver from Ohio State, is also a true sophomore that signed out of this class. We're more looking at the group that signed with Notre Dame. That's why we didn't talk about Francis Brew in the 24 class. That's why we didn't talk about Tion Gray in the 24 class. It's more of the guys that signed. But point being, if we're looking at the Notre Dame team, then yes, the sophomore class is going to have that. But that's the thing, is you do need some of those guys to step up and be that guy. And I like Jaden Sanders. He's not Dallas Golden. If Jaden Sanders steps up, that really helps your depth. He can start and be a good player. Dallas Golden has a difference maker if he steps up. Chris Burgess can be a difference maker. James Flanagan can be a difference maker. Will Black can be a difference maker. Madden Faramo can be a difference maker. We talk about you don't really need Madden to step up, but what if the linebacker core deals with the injuries that the D-line dealt with a couple years ago? Now, all of a sudden, hey, Madden, let's go be that dude. That's kind of where you're at, Trev, why depth is great. But overall, I think when you look at guys like Ethan Long, Mark Zachary, Cam Herron, Matty Augustine, Elijah Burris, a lot of guys like that, Trev. Ko'o Kia is another one who I think is a sophomore that to keep an eye on. He's not pushing right now for a depth role, so we haven't talked about him. He's another one. If there's some injuries now, he's stepping up. But I like what we saw from Ko'o this spring. But if you don't step up, you've got Thomas Davis Jr. breathing down your neck. You got Jacoby Clapper breathing down your neck. And if things go the way that Notre Dame hopes they do the next month, you've also got Caden Henderson and Roman Igwe-Buikwe battling for it if Notre Dame is able to land both of those guys. So he's in that situation too, where I like what I've seen so far, but if you don't keep growing, you're going to get passed up. And there's a lot of guys like that in the class. You look at Owen Strebig. I still like Owen Strebig. I thought like they were struggling. I think it was the second team line in the blue gold game was really struggling. And they threw Owen Strebig in there, and he settled it down, and I thought played really well. The Jersey scrimmage. I said blue gold game, Jersey scrimmage. Thought he played well. He's getting bigger. He's filling out. He's learning. He's kind of grown into his body a little bit more. But he's another guy. Cam Herron is a guy that I like, Trev. I mean, he's done some really good things. But even when you look at those guys that we think have shown potential, Nolan James Jr. is a guy that I really like, but they're just in situations where you can't afford to just kind of coast as a sophomore and just say, hey, my time's next year. You got to be working like a dog because your time may be next year, but if you just kind of coast through the season, you're going to find yourself getting passed up by younger players. And the final guy that we'll talk about here, Trev, as we kind of put a bow on this is Blake Hebert. There's nobody that enters a more of a, I hate to say it to you, bruh, as a redshirt freshman, but you're in a make or break season. Because if you get passed up by one of the two freshmen, what are the odds that somehow next year you're then going to pass them up? What are the odds that guy that passed you stagnates as a sophomore? That's a big one. On the flip side of that, if Blake Hebert can have a strong offseason, I'm going to feel a lot better about the quarterback depth chart for 2026. I don't even care about the starting battle in 27. I don't care. Getting a guy like Blake Hebert, who's got a really good arm, very good athlete, big kid, you can legitimately do things with him that you did with Riley Leonard. Now, not to the degree because he's not Riley Leonard, but there you can run quarterback power. You can run quarterback read. You can make him a goal line runner that can also throw. You can basically run a version of what you did in 2024. If something happens to CJ, and you'll have a better O-line and better receivers around him than what Riley had in 2024. If, God forbid, something happened to CJ. But that's going to involve Blake really taking a technical jump forward. well, but you can't win with a quarterback that misses the layups. Do I need to go put in the Miami of Ohio and Purdue game film for you and show some of the misses that Riley Leonard had early that year? He got Cooper Flanagan injured on a slide route because he threw it so far out in front of him. Cooper reached and hurt himself. The point, however, is that if he doesn't make the jump, now you're relying on a true freshman. Should something happen to CJ Carr, that's going to be a problem.
If Blake Hebert, nobody needed an end to the spring the way that he had it more than Blake Hebert. And honestly, second place of that is probably Ethan Long, who also had a good performance in the blue gold game. So you have two guys from this class that are already showing the fight that we want to see from this 25 class of like, hey, I know everybody's excited about Joey O'Brien and Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard and a lot of the young guys in the 26 class, but there's something to be said about us too. Blake Hebert needed that end to the spring game because he didn't participate in the Jersey scrimmage. He was out on the sideline because he was hurt. So if he can continue to build off of what he did in the blue gold game, the competition for QB2 is wide open going into summer workouts and fall camp, but it's going to be a big season for him. He was already, unfortunately, it's not his fault, an afterthought in the 2025 recruiting class because everybody wanted Deuce Knight. Everybody was kind of licking their wounds from just the crazy recruitment that was. And then they flipped him from Clemson and people weren't as excited about it. I mean, I remember doing the commitment show about Blake Hebert. And there was a lot of people in the chat like, yeah, but he's not Deuce. Yeah, but he's not Deuce. And there was still a lot of that around him. And then the second he's finally entering a competition to be in the backup quarterback spot, there's a lot of people talk, yeah, but Teddy gets here in the summer. Yeah, but Noah Grubbs is doing this. And so a lot of interesting pieces around Blake Hebert. But I'm with you. He has to have a big spring. All encompassing, Brian, kind of when we do these class preview shows, we ask the question, has this class lived up to expectations yet? Is it too early to kind of give a judgment considering they're only going into their second year?
I think it's too early to say definitively that they have underachieved, overachieved. But I think what we can say is that they are on a path that's about where we thought they were when they signed. That's not a bad thing. It's also not a great thing because we didn't love this class the way we did the other classes. I mean, Will Black's been a dude. James Flanagan has lots of potential. Madden's got lots of potential. Burgess has lots of potential. Dallas Gold. But we expected that. What we haven't seen is the Leonard Moore guy, the Benjamin Morrison, the guy that was low ranked that shows up and the dude's going to be a star. There isn't that guy. The guys that we've seen that have star potential are guys that we kind of thought already had that coming in. Well, those other classes had that also. 24 had CJ. They had Kingston. They had guys like that already. But then Tay and Leonard were way better than the ranking showed. We thought they were going to be. There isn't that guy so far. And that's why I don't know that this class is going to necessarily far surpass it. But if they don't, then they're going to get passed up quick. They're going to have to overachieve as a class for this class to have the kind of impact that the 24 and 23 classes had.
Brian, up next here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. We started a very, very fun series where we start stacking up Notre Dame against the other conferences. Like you said earlier, we get a lot of questions about, how does Notre Dame stack up to Ohio State? How do they stack up to Miami? How do they stack up to Georgia and Texas? And what we wanted to do is formulate a show to where we look at it from a conference perspective and we take the top teams from each conference. And what we're going to do now is we're going to compare Notre Dame versus the top teams in the ACC, and we're evaluating where they are from a coaching standpoint, a coaching staff standpoint, overall level of talent, and then we're breaking it down by position groups, sort of. It's, we're combining like wide receiver, tight end, and running backs. We're having like a skilled player, but it's going to be fun.
So, and this is in reaction to something that we wanted to do that some of y'all requested, which is, how about, how does Notre Dame stack up against Oregon? How do they stack up against Ohio State? How do they stack up against India? How do they stack up against Alabama? How do they stack up against Georgia? How do they stack up against Miami? Those type of things. And so when I look at it, it's like, okay, well, that sounds fun. But I don't know if we have enough segments in the summer to do all of that on top of all the other things we wanted to do. So what we want to do is kind of big picture, and then also ESPN came out with a perfect article for this series too last week, Trev, where, obviously we're we're trying to have some conversations about what we think about the team, and it's easy for people to say, "Oh, you're Notre Dame fans. Of course you think that." Well, true, we are Notre Dame fans. We've never hidden that fact, but we also try to be honest and objective as best we can. So when there's other things coming out being like, "See, we're not the only ones saying this," I think that kind of helps with the conversation. And so when you look at, ESPN recently came out with their future power rankings. And again, I don't put too much stock in this. Like, this doesn't automatically mean Notre Dame is going to win a championship because ESPN said so. Like, I don't want to be that guy that like, well, you always say they're garbage, but then when they come out with something you like, you lift it up. And I'm not doing that. I'm not saying, hey, this is why. I'm simply pointing out that this isn't just us saying this. There are other entities that are saying that. And a year ago, Notre Dame was the number 5 team in the country. As far as future power ratings, they were number 5. Ohio State was number 2. They're still number 2. Texas was number 1. They're now down to number 3. Oregon stays at 4. Georgia was 3. They fall into 5. So still obviously in the conversation. Miami is 6. They were 11. So Miami has a big jump. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of the reasons for that are there's younger players of these two schools. There's been, Miami had, I would argue that the Miami's freshman class is like Notre Dame's. It's the best one Miami's landed since Mario's been here. It's very similar to Notre Dame's 26 class. I think Notre Dame's is better, and it was ranked higher by the surface. But the point is, as they're winning more, they're recruiting even better. They're showing they can go to the portal. They've got better coaching. So, Miami jumped up 5 spots. Notre Dame jumped up 4 spots. And you look at those rankings, and I think it backs up kind of what we're going to be doing here in this conversation is to say, hey, let's look at how Notre Dame stacks up in the present and the future. And when we talk about the future, just so you guys understand, we're not projecting what we think these teams are going to do in the 28 recruiting class. We're looking at basically at who's on the roster, present for future, and then also looking at it from the standpoint of like guys that we know are committed. So those will all be parts of, as well we talked about. So, and that's where we are. So when we say future, it's sort of an immediate future, 26, 27, 28, based on as much of what we know about these teams as possible. Part of that is I'm going to give a team that has a track record of success in the portal a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt if they're weak at a position. So if you say, man, for example, Miami hasn't recruited well in the secondary in high school. So in 2 years, I don't think their deep secondary is going to be very good when all these guys leave. I'm like, what guys? And they start listing all the guys. Well, like all but 2 of those guys were portal pickups. You know what I mean? So like there's a track record there. Notre Dame's D-tackle recruiting hasn't been great, hypothetically. And again, these are just examples I don't think are true. I'm just making a point. So once these guys leave, they've kind of done pretty well going out and getting portal guys at that position. So, like, it's the track record of success that I think we're going to look at and say, hey, this team's going to be okay because they have a track record of being in high school or recruiting. They fill up there. And that's kind of where these are. So, without further ado, Trev, that being the statement here. By the way, we will do a mailbag centered around the topics we've discussed today. We don't have a lot of mailbag questions in yet. So, if you guys want us to do a mailbag, go ahead and get those questions in. And as I said, for those that want to talk about recruiting and stuff, we're trying to talk about the topics on the show today. If you have a recruiting question, it's best to put that on the premium board. That's the place for that. We have intel updates and stuff like that on there. So, Trev, we're going to do coaching, head coach, coaching staff, talent, overall talent, and then offensively, we're going to do quarterback, skill players, line, defensively, linebackers, line, then backers, then secondary. We're going to rank Notre Dame against what we perceive to be the 3 best programs in the ACC right now. I think the first 2 are obvious: Miami and SMU. I mean, these are the 2 of the 3 ACC representatives in the playoff the last 2 years. I think they're both, 2 of the higher ranked teams in the preseason in the ACC. They're 2 teams that people consider ACC contenders. They've got stability in the coaching staff or the head coach. They're successfully recruiting, successful in the portal. Like, they're teams that are trending in a good direction. Then when you look at the third team is we're going to put Clemson in there. Now, Clemson would have been a no-brainer in here a year ago. They're coming off an ACC championship. They're in the playoff. They've been a 10-plus win team every year. Last year's 7-6 season knocked them down a big peg. But I still think when you look at it, they're still the team. They're still, to me, the program that's in this conversation with them. Louisville's pushing, but they're not there yet. Florida State could bounce back anytime, but they're not there yet. Pitt's not there. Duke's not there. Virginia's not there. Virginia Tech might be a year from now. Let's see how Coach Franklin does. They might be a team we're talking about when we're having this conversation a year from now. So, but it's really going to be Miami, SMU, and Clemson. So let's start, Trev, with this breakdown, and we're going to begin with head coach. Reminder, if you're a Notre Dame fan or a Miami fan or whoever else, if you disagree with our statement, tell us why. It'll be for a fun conversation. Don't just come out and say, oh, you know what you're talking about, because then I'm just going to come at you in the chat or I'm going to come at you in the show. Let's have a good conversation about this. Make your argument. If you make a good one, we'll pull it up and we'll address it. That's part of the fun of doing this. So let's hear that. And to my guy, Big, just because you say something doesn't mean you have to agree with it. If we engage you in, and if I call you out in the show or responding in the show, it's probably because I have some level of respect for you and enjoy I just think I don't agree with you. It's part of the fun. So don't look at it as like, I want you to comment, but then I disagree with you, so you don't want to comment anymore. That's kind of part of the fun of the whole thing. So let's begin, Trev, and we'll pull this up with head coach. And when it comes to head coach, right now, you and I have Marcus Freeman number 1, Mario Cristobal number 2, Rhett Lashley number 3, Dabo Swinney number 4. And the reason this is, I think, can be controversial, Trev. Mario Cristobal has gone as far in the playoffs as Marcus Freeman has. He beat Marcus Freeman head-to-head and could make a case to be ahead of Marcus Freeman. I think that's fair. See, how can you have Dabo number 4? Well, because we're looking at the present. We're not ranking coaches like we would in a top 5 coaches list. Where are these programs now? Dabo's number 1 on this list if we're talking for their careers. He's got 2 national championships. He's a great coach. But Dabo has not shown he can succeed the way these 3 teams have in the portal era. So until he changes that, I have a hard time having Dabo. They're trending in the wrong direction. And some of his stubbornness is and poor coaching hires is why. And one of the big things that has the 3 coaches ahead of him there, part of it is Marcus Freeman's made way better hires in the last 3 years than Dabo has. Lance Guidry was a bad hire by Mario Cristobal. So you know what he did? He fired him, went out and got Corey Heatherman, who was, I think, won the Burroughs Award. He's put together a very strong staff and say, hey, when I make a mistake, as all coaches do, let's replace him with better coaches. Did a great job. Rhett Lashley has done a really nice job building a staff and keeping it together. There was a lot of people making runs at Mo Crum this offseason, and he was able to get him to stay. The big thing for Dabo is they've had the worst season of all these 3. Their best season is not nearly as good as of the last 2-3 years as what Freeman or Cristobal or Rhett Lashley's is. But also the big thing for me, Trevor, is those 3 know how to show that they can win on the trail in the current era better than Dabo, and they've done a way better job with hires. Now, this will be a big year for Dabo. He made some big moves this offseason. Big as in new coordinator. I'm not saying big like what a great job bringing back Chad Morris. I don't know if that's going to be great or not. We'll find out. Will the Tom Allen hire pay off a little bit more this season than it did last year? There's a lot of things to go. This is going to be a telling year for Clemson. Either they climb back up or they start finding themselves getting passed up by Virginia Tech and Louisville and teams like that. So big offseason for Dabo. But right now, when you look at the current state of these programs, I can't have Dabo any higher.
And understandably so. I mean, you take a look at the 2 coaches ahead of him in the ACC, Miami and SMU, with Mario Cristobal and Rhett Lashley. Those are the 2 teams that right now FanDuel has as the 2 odds-in favorites to actually win the entire league. Completely understandable where Dabo is. When I look at this ranking here, kind of break it down into Notre Dame and Miami are debatable. I give Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame 1 more year of overall success. I know when we talk about playoffs, you can kind of split hairs and it's even, and Cristobal has the head-to-head. But Marcus Freeman on the recruiting trail and putting together a staff is 1 more established year than what Cristobal had. That's why I understand why Notre Dame is ahead of Miami. But those 2 are kind of in a case of their own, class of their own, in my opinion. In their own kind of league right now is Rhett Lashley. He's not close to where Clemson is right now. SMU's not close to where Clemson is right now as an overall program moving forward. but he's not quite yet on the level of Mario Cristobal and Marcus Freeman. And I agree with everything that you said about Dabo Swinney. That's the issue. It's so tough to have somebody. It's when you're going based off of accolades from 2018 and 2019 and 2020, and it's hard to project that forward into 26 and beyond.
Right.
That's the difficult part.
Tomorrow with Dabo?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we just don't know. We don't know where that program is headed. And that's the thing is, Trev, would it shock you if Clemson had a bounce back year and play for the ACC title? It wouldn't shock me at all. Would it shock you if they went 7-6 again either? No. And that's the difficulty. If one of the three teams ahead of them finished 7-6 or 8-5 this year, I'll be shocked. Very surprised.
Yeah.
Because there's at least a floor. Like last year was the floor for right now, in my opinion, for what SMU is under Rhett Lashley. It's the floor. 9-4 with a really bad late season loss to Cal. Got to get over that stuff. But that pales in comparison to what we saw from Dabo, who had like 3 first-round draft picks on his team last year and went 7-6.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. Now, the head-to-head between Mario and Freeman, here's what resulted in Marcus Freeman being ranked higher than Mario Cristobal. Overall, better track record of success. The records between the two coaches are, overall are not great. Now Mario has the advantage, obviously, in the head-to-head. Beat obviously Notre Dame last year. But if you look at the overall track record, I think that while close, I think the Freeman's overall track record is better. Freeman has a better record at Notre Dame than Mario has. He's 43-12 at Notre Dame. Mario Cristobal is 35-19 at Miami, went 5-7, 7-6 his first 2 years. Now, he walked into a situation where they had to kind of overcome some issues, whereas Freeman walked into a team that was playing in the Fiesta Bowl. I get that. I think Marcus Freeman's recruiting classes have been consistently better than Miami's. Miami's has done very well in the portal. They're trying to build more through the high school route now. Their 26 class was the best under Mario, in my opinion. I think their 27 class is going to be even better than what the 26 class was, in my opinion, when it's all said and done. So it's close, but I give Freeman the advantage because they've had better postseason success and because of the fact that Notre Dame overall has just been a better team on and off the field than Miami. But this past year closed that gap significantly between the two. And this upcoming season is going to determine whether it stays this way or whether or not Mario jumps Marcus Freeman. This year's going to have a big say in that.
Without a doubt. Or if it puts them into the same category, like how we have the coaching staffs. I mean, I know we're getting ready to talk about that as well, of, the coaching staffs outside of the head coach are even between Notre Dame and Miami. So with another successful season, Mario Cristobal could become up in the same league with what Marcus Freeman is. That's also very, very likely.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to coaching staff, Trev. This is taking the entire coaching staff into play. Now, have you kind of talk through this one? We could not decide, guys. We kind of punked out a little. Well, let me rephrase. I punked out a little bit on this one because I'm the one that made this ranking. I could not differentiate between Miami and Notre Dame. And so I kind of go with a tie here. When you look at the coaching staff as a whole, still feel the same way about SMU being ahead of Clemson. The overall coaching staff at SMU, to me, right now is more established in the current era. But the Chad Morris hire is going to make or break Dabo's career, the end of Dabo's career. Either they get that spark back that him and Chad Morris had back with Wood, back when they had I think it was Charlie Whitehurst, and then obviously at the beginning of the Deshaun Watson era together, and obviously Taj Boyd, or it's like you're trying to rekindle something that the spark, the fire's out, bro. The fire's out. It's over. Stop trying to tap into the past and look to the future. That could determine that. I could see Clemson making a run up here. Does Matt Luke get back to being the O-line coach we all thought he was when we got hired? Can Tom Allen do for Clemson what he did for Penn State in 2024? There's a lot of potential for Clemson to rise up this list, Trev, but after what we saw last year, they have a lot to prove. A lot to prove. With Miami, this is not a debate going into last year. Notre Dame's number one. You had Mike Denbrock and Chris Ashton won a title and Joe Rudolph and all these, Mike Mickens. Well, now you've got a brand new defensive staff. The Miami overhauled their staff last year in a couple key spots, bringing in Corey Heatherman, who did a great job last year. Shannon Dawson's in the top 10, in my opinion, of coordinators in college football, as is Mike Denbrock. I think these things are this is Alex Maribel is considered one of the better O-line coaches in the business, as is Joe Rudolph. There's a lot of similarities between these two coaching staffs, which is what made it a little bit difficult. I'd give Mike Denbrock the edge on offense. I'd give Corey Heatherman the advantage on defense. Special teams is kind of a wash. Position groups, there's some I like Notre Dame better, some I like Miami better. I couldn't separate between the two.
It's very close, quite literally splitting hairs. Yeah, I mean, from a coaching evaluation standpoint, I would take Mike Denbrock over Miami's offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, but it's splitting hairs. As of today, I'd probably take Corey Heatherman over Chris Ash based on what each of those defenses did last year. You can get into the assistant coaches. I mean, it's who are you taking, Alex Maribel or Joe Rudolph? That's very close. Kevin Beard or Mike Brown? That's close. I mean, there's a lot here. I was totally on board with putting them on the same level. In the same light, like we talked about with head coaches, with a big jump from Mario Cristobal this year, he could very well be on the same plane as Marcus Freeman, and we could be having a different discussion at the end of the 2026 season. I'm with you with Clemson. There's a lot that has to pan out for him. I think bringing Chad Morris back was very boom or bust, because let's call a spade here. Like, can the offense that they ran in 2013 work out in 2026? I have no idea. Or
and
will
how
he
has
even
he
want
evolved over the years as a coach? You know,
exactly.
Is he going to be like Rich Rod, where he's still running the stuff? Rich Rod's still trying to run the stuff he did as the OC at Clemson, you know, and then at West Virginia, and he just hasn't evolved enough to where he's not innovative anymore. There was a time when Chad Morris was considered one of the smartest young offensive coaches in the business. I mean, what he did with Taj Boyd was unbelievable. And he just, you know, obviously he became a head coach at SMU, failed. Became a head coach at Arkansas, failed. Actually didn't fail at SMU. Actually did well his third year. They went 7-17. They did really well his third year, and that got him the Arkansas job. And then he failed there, and he's been kind of, you know, bouncing around ever since. So you look at it, Trev, and it's like, has he evolved in the way that Notre Dame hopes? He is their Chris Ash. I mean, he hasn't been a coordinator since 2020. He was at Auburn in 2020 as the OC. Since then, he was the head coach for a year at Allen High School. He was the offensive analyst at South Florida for a year, working with Jeff Scott, who was one of his proteges at Clemson. That's why he was there. It was like being there with a guy that he was trying to help Jeff Scott out. Then he was at Clemson in 23 as an offensive analyst, spent the 24 season as the wide receiver pass game coordinator at Texas State. Took last year off. This is actually a pretty cool deal. He took last year off. So for those who don't know, Chandler Morris, the quarterback at Virginia that led Virginia to the ACC championship game last year, is actually his son. It's Chad Morris's son. So since he was at him, it's not like he left Clemson, but like he took football off last year. He was at Texas State, where they had a very good offense with him there, Trev. Took the year off to be with his son and follow his son's final year playing football. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so he's now back. So how's he evolved? Like you said, I think it's boom or bust. And it could have him and Matt Luke and Tom Allen are the guys I'm watching, that if they are what people at Clemson think they are, and to a degree, Trev, what I think you and I think they could be, Clemson could shoot up this list in a hurry next year. They really could.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the biggest misconception with Clemson is the 2025 season that they had is just what they've done every single year, and that's just not the case. They made the playoffs in 2024. Like, they're not so far removed from their 2020 season where it's like that was eons ago. But we are approaching the time where it's like you can't really use that as a frame of reference for how good they're going to be in 2026. It's a very, very, very pivotal year for them, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. And then with Rhett Lashley's staff, some of it is they just need to continue ascending, but they're definitely on the right track.
Yep. There's a big gap between Miami and Notre Dame and SMU, but SMU is gaining, in my opinion. They're
Without
gaining.
a doubt.
Let's go overall talent. Before we get into offense and defense, Trev, let's get into overall talent. And it's a lot of this is going to look the same and when we get to like the position groups. But overall talent, Notre Dame right now, we have number 1. Miami have number 2. We did a show early in the offseason where we ranked the top 10 teams in college football based on just talent. I think we had Notre Dame 1, Miami 5. These are two of the best rosters in college football. There's no doubt about that. They're both loading up. Miami had their best recruiting class under Cristobal coming in. Freeman's freshman class is his best recruiting class so far. They're both projecting to be even better in 27. So they're both heading in the right direction. But I still say, Trev, that the depth of talent at Notre Dame is better. And Miami lost some guys last year that I don't know that they necessarily have the same level coming through at as many of those positions. We'll find out. They're also still very portal dependent. And so I think that kind of factors in a little bit as well. But I think this is two of the better rosters. But just to me, Notre Dame across the board, my guy Albert's already getting into running backs and receivers. Pump the brakes on that. We'll get to that. But overall talent, top to bottom, starters, depth of talent, all that, I give the advantage to Notre Dame. We won't spend a lot of time here, Trev, because we're going to get more into that as we get into the offensive positions. But this is how I see the overall talent. I think it's 1 and 2 is close. We have Notre Dame number 1 overall, Miami number 5. Isn't that where we had Miami was 5 or 6? I think they were 5.
Yep.
In our rankings of the just nationally rankings. Big gap between Miami and Clemson. And then there's a gap between Clemson and SMU. SMU does not have inferior talent to SMU overall. I think that they're not developed the way that we've seen the SMU kids get developed.
Agreed completely. Overall talent, the thing that people have to understand is this isn't just about starting lineups. If we were talking just starting lineups, the talent between Notre Dame and Miami would be very comparable, very debatable at certain spots. You have to look at everything from top to bottom. With Clemson, it's very skilled talent heavy. A lot of players have to start panning out, which is why their future is a little bit more unpredictable than what is Notre Dame and Miami's. I'm with this list completely.
So let's get into some specifics, Trev. Offense and defense. We're going to go quarterback, skill talent. That's running backs, receivers, and tight ends, and then linemen. So let's start things off with quarterback. Again, this isn't just a starter versus starter comparison. This is an overall where they are. So let's dive into this, and we'll start off with quarterback. I give Notre Dame the advantage here. Let's just say hypothetically that we acknowledge that Darren Mensah and CJ Carr is a wash. Because I think when you talk to people, there's going to be some people that think Mensah's better, some people think Carr is better. This is not a show where we're going to debate Carr versus Mensah. We'll have that debate in another show. But let's just look at it from the standpoint of what does the present and the future of that position look like? And the reality is Miami can't say that they know what the future is going to look like at quarterback other than, well, we're just going to go get another portal guy next year. Well, maybe. What if rules pass and it makes transferring harder? What if the legislation that we're debating with the Cruz-Cantwell bill gets passed, goes immediately into effect, and guys that have already transferred once can't transfer again? That's going to limit some of the quarterbacks that can go in the portal. So when you look at it, it's they lost Emory Williams in the offseason. Luke Nichols, their backup quarterback. They got Judd Anderson. Trev, when I look at Miami, you can debate that maybe their starter is as good as Notre Dame's starter. It's debatable. I'm not even going to sit there and say it's not debatable. You and I think CJ Carr's better, but it's debatable. The problem is I don't think that when you look at what's behind it from a talent standpoint, I don't think it's debatable. Now, what Miami does, because I'm just not sold that Darian Coleman can be that guy in college. We'll see. Now, they do have Israel Abrams coming in next year. So I think there's a chance with Darian Coleman and with Israel Abrams that we might see Miami eventually have a high school recruit play quarterback. Maybe. But when I look at Notre Dame and I see Blake Hebert, Teddy Gerard, Nolan Grubbs, Florida's Mr. Football last year, and Champ Mons in the 27 class, I think that's where Notre Dame gets the edge. It's the depth of talent and the future of the position is more known and more proven and deeper.
Yeah, that's the clear separator, assuming the starters are even a wash. And I'm with you, different show for a different time. But let's assume the starters are a wash. The depth is what separates it, especially with Champ Mons coming in. that's going to be the player that really separates this gap between the two. Same thing with SMU. Like, I like Kevin Jennings. I don't think that he's in the same conversation as CJ Carr. I don't think he's even in the same conversation as Darian Mensah. But Kevin Jennings is a good college quarterback, a really good college quarterback coming back. But then the question is, what's behind it? And then with Clemson, they don't even have a solidified starter yet. There's a lot of thought that it could be Chris Vizina, but I know that battle is still, I believe, still going on. So Clemson is 4th overall on this list, but room for improvement. That's a common theme with Clemson so far in this ranking, is they have the most room for variance. They could end up 2nd in some of these position group rankings. They could end up, they could surge all the way up to 1st, depending on what this season looks like for them. But as of right now, this is where they have to fall in the quarterback ranking.
Yeah. So when you look at Clemson and SMU got a really good, they've done well at quarterback in recent classes. I actually like what they've been doing at quarterback. They've got a kid, Trev, that you and I have talked about, that we saw live last summer, kid that impressed us in person. That's Malachi Ziegler.
Yeah.
They're going to have him. He's he's a 27 quarterback that you and I are very high on. So that helps with me. They got Matt Leinert's son committed to him last year. We'll see how he can do. I like the fact that they're not really a portal team in the quarterback, but if they have to go to the portal next year, they have the type of team that they can go get a guy. Clemson has not been recruiting the position well in recent years.
Their evaluation's been poor.
Yeah. And they've just had misses. I mean, Notre Dame flipping Blake Hebert, the guy that they thought would be their redshirt freshman quarterback, is currently in South Bend. They had him committed for a while. So, and they weren't as prepared to move on from him as Notre Dame was to move on from Deuce, because Notre Dame went to Blake. They didn't have an answer. And their really talented run throw guy that they had is probably going to go. Now, here's where this could get a little bit interesting. So talking to some people, talking to some people from the area, but then also reading some reports that we've seen, there's a lot of excitement from Clemson fans and Clemson media about a true freshman, Tate Reynolds, who apparently had a really good spring. And when you talk about, why is Chris Denson moving to receiver? Well, number one, he's just not a quarterback. He's you know what I mean? Like, he could have played under Rich Rod. Like, he's that kind of quarterback, like the Woody Dancer type of guy. Another reason for it is the fact that they have Tate Reynolds performed very well this spring. So much so that some reporters have said, if he continues to do this and Chris Vizina doesn't take a jump, that it's not a given that Chris Vizina is even going to start. My question is, does that say something about Tate Reynolds? Or does that say something about Chris Vizina, or a little bit of both? But either way, there's no Kevin Jennings for Clemson, and there's a little bit more uncertainty about the future of the position. So that's why we have SMU number 3.
As far as skilled talent goes, this is all encompassing. We're talking running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends lumped into the same conversation. This is where you see Miami surge ahead. Obviously, we're evaluating everything, starting lineup and what it looks like for the future, but we also can't be dismissive in what Miami has coming back right now. I mean, the crazy thing is Malachi Toney still has to come back for 2027 because he's only going into his redshirt season. So the immediate future there for them is still looking very bright.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the eligibility is right now for Cam Vaughn and Vandrevius Jacobs. I don't know if they can come back in 2027. Don't know that off the top of my head. But as far as overall skilled talent encompassing, Miami has the edge here over Notre Dame, but it is close. Very similar to how we talked about how Clemson has the opportunity to surge up ahead in certain categories. Notre Dame also has that opportunity as well. But I'm not ready yet to compare directly Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young to Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown. I'm not willing to yet compare Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison and Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter to Malachi Toney and Cooper Barcotti. And, so the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So those are our top 2. The interesting one with this list is Clemson. We have questions about their quarterback. We have questions about their coaching staff. We have questions about their head coach and if he's willing to continue adjusting. Wide receiver, though, is where they can really close the gap.
Yep.
Brian, we talked before the show, and you said if we were splitting these up as far as position ranking goes, Clemson would be ahead of Notre Dame as far as wide receivers concerned.
They'd be number 2.
Yeah.
They'd be number 2 behind Miami. If this was just a receiver ranking.
Yeah.
And by the way, Trev, I think Barcotti's the only kid who can't come back next year.
Okay.
Plus, they have Josh Moore They signed a Wingo kid as a true freshman. I haven't seen Wingo much. I think I might have seen like sophomore, junior film. Don't really remember a whole lot about it. Brian Smith thinks he's a stud. So Miami's not slowing down at receiver. Like they're doing very well there. Tight end, I think it's debatable. Elijah Lofton's more proven than the Notre Dame players. He's not Ian Premer. I don't know that he's James Flanagan as a prospect. We'll see. Running back is close. Notre Dame, I think, has a better freshman class than Miami, but I like Javian Mallory. I think he fits that system very well. He's a good, talented running back. Receiver, to me, is where the gap is. Now, what I will say is this. Miami's one at receiver. I would put Clemson 2. You can make a case that just for 2026, you could make an argument for SMU over Notre Dame as well, because they have Ymir Knight coming back, who was a very good player last year. And then Jalen Cooper he had more catches last year than what Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham have combined in their 3 years combined in college. Two for Mylan, 1 for Quincy. And he's a guy that I would gladly take at Notre Dame. What I will say is that Notre Dame closed the gap in a big way this offseason at wide receiver. That's why they're even number 2. Is when you look at, obviously, bringing back Faison, bringing back Greathouse. You've got the junior class of Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate. You have your rising sophomore class who has Elijah Burris we're excited about. But here's what separated. Notre Dame added 7 receivers this offseason. 5 freshmen who are very talented, and then you have the 2 transfer portal kids. That helped them close the gap. Now, Miami would rank ahead of Notre Dame right now as far as like running back rankings for 2026 because Mark Fletcher was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Char Brown was a 1,000-yard rusher 2 years ago at North Dakota State. They were both key in parts of their offense last year. But I still like Notre Dame's depth chart and quote-unquote potential better than Miami. I wouldn't rank them. So Miami ranks higher now, but it's kind of like 24. Remember we said in 24? Yeah, Notre Dame can't rank here now, but we're going to have to revisit this at the end of the year when we see what Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to do. That's kind of how I feel about the running back room now. So tight end conversation. When you look at running back conversation, receiver, I think is where Miami has a very clear advantage on the present, and their future is every bit as good as Notre Dame's future, in my opinion. Now, Notre Dame's closing the gap, but they're not there yet. Clemson has a better receiving core than Notre Dame. Like TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, and then they're bringing in the freshman class that 2 kids that turned down Notre Dame that Notre Dame would have taken. It's actually 3. It was, Naeem Burrows, Connor Solomon, and then Gordon Porter?
Gordon Sellers.
Gordon Porter, I think, is the kid that Notre Dame got a commitment from. They ended up going to Arizona State a number of years ago, which is a really funny story. But anyway, that freshman class for Clemson was really good. Well, Notre Dame is better. Maybe it's bigger, but Notre Dame would have gladly taken all 3 of those kids if they wanted to commit last year in the current Notre Dame class. The problem is Clemson is a distant 3rd or 4th at running back and tight end.
Yeah. That's
the problem. Now, they've got a couple young backs I like. Gideon Davidson has a chance to be a good player for them. But the reality is that's a position they've got to fix through high school recruiting in the portal, without a doubt. SMU's okay at running back. They had a couple really good backs a couple years ago. They're both gone now. I think one in the NFL, one transferred. They did get Raphael Knight from Cal. He's a big physical back, 4.1 yards per carry last year. There's a big gap between SMU and Clemson compared to Notre Dame at running back. Where SMU, I think you could make a case that maybe they should be ahead of Clemson is because they also have a better tight end room than Clemson, thanks to the portal. The kid they got from Texas A&M, and then, of course, Randy Pittman from Florida State and UCF. You could argue that SMU should be 3rd ahead of Clemson. I'm going with Clemson because I think their receiving core is better. I really like Gideon Davidson, and I think Clemson's good at tight end. But you can have an argument that SMU could be ahead of Clemson here as well, Trev. I obviously wouldn't agree with it, but I think it's a case that could be made.
Oh, without a doubt. The receiving core clears, and if SMU's really only, I don't want to say claim to fame, but if their strongest argument is just with the tight end, which is really one position compared to Clemson's 3 to 4 wide receivers, that's where they close the gap. But I'm with you. It's definitely debatable.
Yeah. Very debatable. let's finish up, Trev, on the offensive side with the offensive line. And this is going to be obviously the same order. We do have Notre Dame 1 and Miami 1 and 2 in every category. This one for 2026 is more debatable than it is for the future, in my opinion. So I think you could look at Miami with some of the veterans they have. Samson Okunlola is an extremely talented player. Jackson Cantwell is the number 1 offensive tackle in the country as a freshman. You've got Matthew McCoy. You've got Ryan Rodriguez. You've got some talented players. Notre Dame's, I think, has not only equal talent, if not better, I'd argue better. I think their line obviously is 5 guys that played together to some degree last year. But I don't know that there's a team in the country that's recruited the offensive line better than Notre Dame in the last several years. Yes, Miami has Jackson Cantwell. Yeah, they have Samson Okunlola who's moved to guard. Notre Dame has Gerby Lambert. They have Will Black. They have Grayson McHugh. And they're bringing in another offensive line class with a 5-star, Nolu Olababola. And they've got a shot to get Albert Simeon. I'm not factoring Albert Simeon into this conversation right now. I'm just sitting there making the point that there's nobody, in my opinion, that's recruited offensive line better than Notre Dame. So I would take the current Notre Dame offensive line over Miami's. Now, if we were to do this ranking a year ago, let's say everyone from Miami is coming back, we might have more of a debate. But when you talk about Notre Dame should have one of the best offensive lines in the country, I think 3 different preseason magazines ranked Notre Dame's offensive line either first or second in college football this year. So again, this isn't just us, but this doesn't even get into the fact that Notre Dame just signed their best offensive line class yet. And the one that they're about to sign isn't going to be as big, but if they get Albert Simeon, just as good as last year's class. There's nobody that's recruiting better than Notre Dame. I don't know that I'd rank anyone better than Notre Dame on the offensive line when it comes to present and future, based on the way they're recruiting. Now, coaching, we can have that conversation. But whatever you say about Joe Rudolph, if he's the same coach in 27 that he was in 24, he's working with way better talent than true freshman Anthony Knapp, redshirt freshman Sam Pendleton, Pat Coogan, Rocco Spindler, 2 undrafted free agents. Great kids, tough players. And then your starting right tackle was another undrafted free agent. So in 2024, 3 of your 4 starters were undrafted free agents. One of them was a true freshman. The only guy you had in 24 that was an NFL prospect of the veterans is Billy Schrouth, ended up becoming a 5th round draft pick. Would have been higher if not for the injuries. I think Billy's a day 2 guy if he's not injured. I truly believe that. But that's it. The other guys were undrafted free agents. So no one's recruiting better than so even if he's the same O-line coach as he was before, he's working with way better talent than what he had in a year where he was part of a team that played for the title. I think they'll be fine there.
Yeah, they'll be cool. There's stuff that he has to show us, like we've talked about before so many times on the show, but I don't know if anybody can go toe-to-toe with him as far as recruiting is concerned. I'm all sorts of on board for Notre Dame being ahead of Miami in this category. They have a lot of talented players, as does Notre Dame, but the future outlook is significantly greater for Notre Dame, in my opinion. SMU has a couple of offensive linemen that we like as well. I mean, PJ Williams was on your all-opponent team. I mean, he was very close to being on my second team all-opponent team.
And we both had Addison Nichols on the first team at Card.
Yeah, we did.
You have Josh Bates as the second team center, correct?
Adam is my first team center.
First team center? So you had 2 SMU guys on your first team. I had 2 SMU guys on my first team, and they weren't the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
very high.
They're doing well. They're doing well. Real quick, Trevor, but SMU also had the number 24 recruiting class in the country last year, and 2 of their 3 best signees were 4-star offensive linemen. They signed Drew Evers, who's a really talented player from Texas. They also signed Evan Goodwin, who's a name that Notre Dame fans should know, from Arkansas, who was offered by Notre Dame and visited Notre Dame. They also got Samuel Utu, who's a talented player as well. So they're bringing in a very good offensive line class. So they're looking to keep rolling on the offensive line. Clemson had a talented offensive line last year, but it underachieved. And they haven't recruited as well, in my opinion. This is crazy to say this. They have not recruited the offensive line as well as SMU.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's crazy to say.
Yeah, that's where I was going, man. It's the Clemson's lack of recruiting is not just specific to the quarterback position. They've failed to recruit offensive line at a high level, or at least the level that you would think a program like that should be. Wide receiver, they haven't really taken a step back, but every other position on offense has been.
Watch out for Clemson in the 707 tournament, bro. I'm telling you right now, in the 707 tournament, Clemson's going to be nasty.
No,
They're
they'll be
nasty.
unstoppable.
Yeah.
But it's weird though to think that quarterback has been a question mark for them, running back has been a question mark for them, tight end is a question mark for them, and offensive line is now a question mark for them. So they come in fourth on this list.
Yep. Let's go defense, Trev. And I think the first area on defense will be the defensive line. I think this is going to be the one that's probably the most debatable, and that's the defensive line. And you and I put the advantage to Notre Dame. That is because of last year, insofar as the two studs that dominated Notre Dame last year aren't there anymore. That's really where it's at. There is no Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor on the roster anymore. It's a talented roster. You added Damon Wilson. When you look present and future, I give Notre Dame the advantage. I think the debate could be had about who has the better D-line in 26. If I believe I'm correct here, Trev, I think some magazines have Notre Dame higher than Miami, and some have Miami higher than Notre Dame, I believe, in the preseason defensive line rankings. One outlet, I think, has Notre Dame's D-line second behind Texas. And others have them like 8, 9. So it varies. It's debatable this year. Where I don't think it's debatable, however, is when I look at the future and you look at how well the two teams are recruiting. I think Miami brought in a very good defensive line class last year. Ashari Charles is a top 100 player. Keyshawn Stantz was a top 150 caliber player. Jordan Campbell's a 4-star player from top 225 guy from last year. Frederick Sanchez is a 4-star player, top 350 kind of guy on the high school rankings. They got Isaac Chikwara from last year, good, big, physical kid, sawed off, short, stout, gonna be 300 pounds when all said and done. They got Logan Nagel, 3-star kid from Jersey, solid player, good depth. But none of those guys are Rodney Dunham. None of those guys are Ebenezer Utade. None of those guys, in my opinion, honestly, are Elijah Golden. I think you could make a case that Charles he's a good player. But again, he's 6'2", 235, whereas the Notre Dame kids are 6'4", 6'5", super long arms. It's Notre Dame D-line recruiting is different. Now, here's where Miami's going to get a boost that might be negated here somewhat soon. So if you give Notre Dame the edge based on 26 recruiting, when you look at Miami, they just flipped Jaden Bryant from LSU, who's a 5-star recruit, according to On3. He's the number 23 player in the country. And based on what Notre Dame has landed so far, he is obviously ranked higher than them. But if Notre Dame gets Abraham Cisse, now they can match your Jaden Bradshaw or your Jaden Bryant, and then you've got Aiden O'Neal, who's a top 100 player, Jackson Vaughn, who I think will end up as a top 100 player. You've got David Fuller-Runshaw, who, by the way, is a higher ranked player than Jaden Bryant on 3. We'll see about the other ones. So I think, you've got Ezekiel Anyabile, kid that Notre Dame passed on, solid top 250 caliber player. Notre Dame offered him, passed on him. He ended up going to Miami. Miami needed him. It's a good pickup for Miami. DeMarco Jenkins is a solid 3-star player. So right now you could argue 27 recruiting is close. I'd give Notre Dame a slight edge. Jaden Bryant's a dude, but when it's all said and done, if Notre Dame gets Abraham Cisse, if they get Braden Parks, I don't think this is going to be overly close. So when I look at it, again, I think the present, you could debate back and forth. But when you add the present and the future, I think it's a clear advantage Notre Dame. Now, what Miami has been able to do, that is they are able to go out and get a Damon Wilson. They are able to go out and get a Darius Slay. They are able to go out and get the kid. Was it Keanu Evans, I think is the kid's name? Keanu Scott. Who's the kid they got from Nebraska? I think his first name is Keanu. I can't remember if it's Evans or Scott. So they're able to get some good players in the portal, but so is Notre Dame. And so that's where I look at and say I think that Notre Dame has the edge when you combine present plus future. And that's where this debate that's where the debate ends for me is that Notre Dame, I think, can match what Miami is now. Damon Wilson had more sacks than Boubacar Traore last year. Boubacar had more tackles for loss. I know my guy Daly likes PFF grades. Boubacar had a higher grade than Damon Wilson last year. I think the key for Notre Dame is to be better this year is they need that breakout from Bryce Young. I think that's going to be the big key for Notre Dame this year. But who breaks out? Is it Marquise Lightfoot or is it Bryce Young? Our guy Albert Lowe said, Lightfoot was a 5-star. Yeah, so was Bryant Young. So was Keon Keeley. So Notre Dame's got their 5 stars in the recruiting class. So was, Rodney Dunham, who's the number 5 player in the country last year. Ebenezer Utade was like number 35, 36, 38 maybe. last year. So both of them have been loading up. These are two of the most talented D-lines in the country. I'm going with Notre Dame with a slight advantage here, present and future. And then once again, there's a gap between them and Clemson. A year ago, Clemson might be ahead of both of them if we're looking at what with Peter Woods and TJ Parker and getting Will Helt out of the portal and Demontre Capehart. Those guys are gone and they all underachieved last year. And they haven't recruited the same caliber player to replace them. Now, I think Clemson could be good this year. Got Vic Burley coming back. Helt comes back. They could still have a good D-line this year. I just don't think it's going to be as good as Miami and Notre Dame's, and I don't think they're recruiting the way that Notre Dame and Miami are.
No, as far as defensive line is concerned, Notre Dame and Miami are in very, very separate leagues than Clemson and SMU. Then the unfortunate reality for SMU is all four of their starting defensive linemen are all going to be portal guys this year. Mm-hmm. All their four projected starters. So they have a ways to go as far as the outlook of their trenches.
And Trev, that's always going to be a thing for SMU. They're always going to mostly have to build their defensive line through the portal. And it's going to make it hard for them to be ranked higher than this because there's always going to be those unknowns. We talked about Marcus White come from UMass and, can he have the same kind of breakout that the kid from Delaware had going to North Carolina? I mean, that's going to be their challenge is they're going to constantly be having to build through the portal. I don't think SMU is going to be a team that is capable of consistently recruiting defensive line out of high school the way that Notre Dame, Miami, and Clemson can.
Right.
This is one position where it's going to be a lot harder.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
At least of the knowns. That's the difference. Let's talk linebackers, Trev.
This is the one that I do not think is overly debatable. We could talk secondary. We will talk secondary a bit later. Linebackers is not a question. I understand that Miami brings back some talented guys, but when you look at everything all-encompassing, this might be a bit aggressive. I don't think that there's a contest this year, but that's not specific to Miami. I think that's specific to every other team in the country. No other program in the country returns both of their starters and three rotational guys. No other school in the country returns a middle linebacker. Well, actually, there might be a couple of schools that return a middle linebacker going into their third year. Point being, nobody can match Notre Dame's depth this year. So 2026, clear advantage goes to the Irish. And then when you start talking about the future, when you have guys like Madden Frema who can come back, when you have guys like Jaden Osbury who can come back, then when you start thinking about them picking up, yes, Kingston can come back. When you start thinking about guys like Thomas Davis who's coming up, they just signed Caden Henderson. And that's not even factoring in if they're able to close on Roman Igwe-Buikwe. Because, again, when we talk future, we're talking about players who are currently committed to Notre Dame. All signs point to Notre Dame being number one overall on this list. Miami has talented players. I'm not trying to dismiss this, but you could replace the U logo with any other logo in the country, and I'm still taking Notre Dame's by a country mile. They have the best linebacking core in the country.
I think they have the best current linebacker class in the country. We're not the only ones that think that. They're top 2 to 4 from everybody. As you mentioned, the future Ko Okia is another guy. Yeah. The 27 class is going to go a long way towards determining whether or not Notre Dame stays here. It's just nationally. They've got to get Caden Henderson and Roman Igwe-Buikwe for that to happen.
Got to close.
The 26 class was good. It wasn't great, but I don't know that anybody had a great linebacker class in 26, to be honest with you. I mean, we've talked about that a bunch. If you get Henderson and you get Igwe-Buikwe, then I think you stay there. Here's why I say that. So once Drake's gone, Jalen Sneed's gone, Kingston's gone, and Jaden Osbury's gone, and you've got Madden Frema, what is the other stud that you have? Whereas Miami just got two guys that I like a lot in A.J. Randall and Noah Glover. Noah Glover, I had 3 linebackers that I wanted in this class. You give me 2 of those 3, and I'm fired up about them from the minute Brian Jean-Marie showed up. And it was Caden Henderson, Roman Igwe-Buikwe, and Noah Glover. Now, I'm sure part of that's my Virginia bias, but hey, you know what? Brian Jean-Marie loved him as well. And so they're reloading at linebacker. Notre Dame has to show that they can. Right now they have 0 commits. And so, and guys, he did not say he signed. If he said he signed, it was a misspeak. He hasn't signed, so stop trying to turn that into something, okay? He can't sign anyway. Even if he had committed, which he hasn't, he can't sign. So chill out. Okay. I love how the chat loves to jump on us every time we misspeak. We're going to speak for 3 hours and not say something that we obviously didn't mean. Trevor did not mean that he signed. So I think we can move on past that. Thank you, chat. But when you see other teams that are recruiting linebacker really well in 26 and 27 and Notre Dame has nobody committed, you're like, okay, if you want to keep up and you want to keep that spot at the top, you've got to really do well in 27. And that's why they've got to get those two guys.
Have to. Absolutely have to. And then the outlook with Clemson, man, I mean, it's again, the common theme, it feels like they're just really starting to fall behind in every major recruiting category, not named wide receiver. And linebacker is kind of more of the same story with them. They've had talented guys come through before in the past. They've had trouble maintaining some of those guys, developing some of those guys. Clemson is definitely in a spot where they're closer to falling behind SMU than what they are gaining on Miami and Notre Dame. That's going to be very interesting to watch how that plays out as well.
Clemson has, if we're doing an all ACC team, I'd probably put Sammy Brown on my first team all ACC team at linebacker.
Sure.
I like Clemson at linebacker. I think this is one of the positions where I'm most confident saying they've got a shot if they can do well in the 27 class of closing the gap a little bit. Like the 26 class, like their 26 class was kind of weird. They only signed one linebacker last year, but it's a good player, Braden Riley, who's from St. Xavier in Ohio. So 27, we'll see how they're able to finish in 27, but in 27, I think is going to be key for them as well. If they can load up. Now they got Sammy Brown's younger brother, Max. He's not as good as Sammy. They did get a kid that I like out of Michigan named Bryce Kish. So there's a couple other kids that they really like. They're going to have to close on them well if they're going to be able to stay here. And then I actually I think this is a position where I think one of the few where like all four are actually pretty good here. I like SMU's present and future. I think that's a position they've been doing a really good job of finding under the radar kids. I had Brandon Booker on my first team all opponent team, who's a junior linebacker there as well. So I think it's very clear. Notre Dame's got Matt Framo and a bunch of good football players, Thomas Davis Jr., Ko Okia. But to stay on top, they've got to get at least one more stud, and that's what hopefully the 27 class will be. So let's wrap things up, Trevor, with a look at the secondary. Present and future, Notre Dame, in my opinion, has the edge. This is another one, though. I think backer's not close. D-line is close. DB is close. But again, I'm going with the present and the future. Notre Dame's freshman. Notre Dame has landed now 2 big-time DB classes in a row. I don't know that anybody has out-recruited Notre Dame the last 2 years in the secondary. Anyone. When you look at Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas, who's now gone, Ethan Long, Jadon Blair, Brandon Logan, one of them is now gone. And then the freshman class, 5-star Joey O'Brien, 5-star Kari Adams, top 50 player Aiden Pouncey, Chaz Smith, Nick Reddish. Secondary is where I think Notre Dame has the edge here. If anyone on the schedule was going to challenge Notre Dame, it would be Miami. Their portal class helped them a lot. O.J. Frederick's a very talented player. Bryce Fitzgerald is a decent player, according to daily comments. I think we had a conversation about that the other day. He's an okay player.
Who?
That's one where I look at and say, hey, Miami's close, but the way that Notre Dame's recruiting, and then same thing in 27, Trev, is Notre Dame once again is recruiting very well in the 27 class in the secondary as well. So they got Zay Adams coming in. They've got Ace Austin coming in. Obviously, Zayden Gamble. Miami has got a commitment. See, sometimes people misspeak. They have a commitment from Dante Wright, who's a big-time corner from Poly out in California. He's a 5-star kid. So Miami's also doing well there. A. King Hall is a really good player. They're both recruiting the position very well. But as much as I like Miami's 27 secondary class, I think Notre Dame's is as good, if not in the ballpark. They wanted Zayden Gamble. Notre Dame got him. Their secondary class last year does not compete with Notre Dame's secondary class last year. With all due respect to James Dunnigan and Jalen Waters and guys like that, Camden Portis. It's not even close. Notre Dame had more 5 stars than Miami had top 100 players in the secondary class last year.
Yeah, for sure. Notre Dame, I think, is the clear-cut front runner here. SMU, they have room to grow on all fronts for defense. They do. But right now they came in last in all 3 of these categories. But for them, it's establishing more of a high school pipeline. Like you said, I think they're always going to end up being a little bit more portal reliant.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clemson's kind of just in this weird in-between stage with their secondary. Especially after, I mean, obviously what's his name? Khalil Barnes. Is that the player that left and went to Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's that did not end up working out. But again, I find myself repeating the same thing. Notre Dame and Miami are in a clear category of their own here. And it's a question between whether Clemson or SMU are going to be able to play catch up or not.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Albert McKinney said, not in the secondary. Notre Dame got the best player in more, but I got to argue the depth. OJ, O'Connor, Xavier Lucas, Brown, co-starters, not another team in the country can say that. I don't know that I would agree with that, Albert. I think you could argue that it's close. I think that Miami has more established players, but again, when we're talking about present and future, this isn't just about who's better in 2026. When you talk about present and future, I mean, Xavier Lucas is a junior this year. OJ is a junior this year. Zachariah Poyser's young. Bryce Fitzgerald's young. O'Connor's a transfer, but Notre Dame has 4 corners. Actually, Notre Dame has 5 corners on the roster that started at least 3 games last year as well. Leonard Moore's the best corner in the country. Christian Gray's a guy that ranks in, I think, the top 12 among the corners coming back next year. DJ McKinney's a guy that I've seen get projections to be in the first round of the draft. I don't buy them. I think he needs to show something different, but that's a guy with a lot of talent. And then you look at Notre Dame's freshman class from last year. Dallas Golden started 3 games. Mark Zachary started 3 games. Jaden Sanders is a sophomore at Notre Dame. He started 3 games at Michigan last year, all highly ranked recruits coming out of high school. And as I mentioned, Notre Dame had last year had a 5-star cornerback in Kari Adams, a 5-star safety in Joey O'Brien. Ethan Pouncey, I think, was the first or second player outside the 5-star range last year. And Chad Smith, I believe, was a borderline top 100 player on 3 as well. Zay Hassan's a top 100 player, top 50 player. Ace Alston's a top 100 player. Zayden Gamble's a borderline top 100 player. So again, this isn't just about right now. And buddy, you're acting like we're saying these guys suck. Albert, I think that you're missing. So just a real quick thing, Albert. The comment about, because I don't think you were in the show the other day, the comment about Bryce Fitzgerald being he's okay, that was an inside joke. We were messing with daily comments the other day in the chat, acting like when we did our all-opponent team, we're acting like we weren't going to have Bryce Fitzgerald on there. And we were acting like we didn't know who he was. He's not that good of a player. So that's where that joke came from. Obviously, we had Bryce Fitzgerald on our first team, all-opponent team. So that was an inside joke comment. It wasn't actually saying he's an okay player. So relax a little bit. But, and yes, Andre Hippolyte's a nice player. Miami went after him when they lost Zayden Gamble to Notre Dame. I'm just saying. So Notre Dame is obviously recruiting that position at extremely high level. Now, the question I have there, Trev, here's the question I have there. Yeah. Can Aaron Henry do what Mike Mickens did in the secondary? That's the one question I have. Not that he's given me any reason to think that he can't. It's just we don't know if he can. He was at Illinois.
Right.
It's different than recruiting at Notre Dame. Mike Mickens was recruiting at Cincinnati before he came to Notre Dame, right? I mean, so like it doesn't mean anything. It's just I need to see him recruit for a year or two before I can say, oh, he's going to be what Mike Mickens was. That's where I'm at on that one. But based on what we know, I give Notre Dame the edge.
As do I. I'm with you completely.
You know what we're not going to do? We're not going to do special teams. We couldn't get Vince on the show. He had to work today, so we're not going to do special teams. But, you know, Trev, obviously Notre Dame had an advantage in a lot of those areas, but a lot of those are close. And continuing in the future is going to require that Notre Dame continue to recruit at a high level. Because 1 or 2 bad down classes in a row, and all of a sudden Miami passes you, Georgia's back in front of you. You know, I mean, that's the reality is there's a fine line between being one of the 2-3 best rosters in the country and being 8 or 9. One bad offseason, one bad recruiting class could do that for a team. I mean, I think Georgia had a couple okay recruiting classes that had some a little overrated and had some portal losses. And then they're still very good, but they don't have the roster that Notre Dame has right now, that I would argue that Miami has right now, that Ohio State has right now, and teams like that. So Texas has right now. And just because they had a couple bad years of losing guys from the portal and a couple bad years where maybe some guys they got were a little overrated and haven't panned out. So those are the things that you look at to say things can change like that. I mean, as we're looking through the list a year ago, if you'd have told me that Mario Cristobal was close to Marcus Freeman, I'd have laughed at you. If you'd have told me a year ago that Miami and Notre Dame are tied on our list and coaching staff, I'd have laughed at you. I'd have laughed at you. If you'd have told me a year ago that Miami was going to be this great top 5 receiving core, I'd have laughed at you. Like, dude, they lost 7 of their 8 top pass catchers. What are you talking about? Well, they got Malachi Toney. So? Who's Malachi Toney? He wasn't even a top 100 recruit coming out, which is, again, why you don't pay attention to recruiting rankings. I'm being hyperbolic on that. Miami fans knew right away that Malachi Toney was going to be a dude. It was the first time they saw him in spring practice. But my point is, nobody thought that when he signed. That's what I say. Things can change in a hurry in college football. That's why ABC. I had a coach text me today, ABC, always be recruiting. So you got to always be, because one bad season, one bad hire, and all of a sudden you go from number 1 or 2 to number 7 or 8. Now you're chasing again. And that's where Notre Dame is right now.
Brian, we have a daily mailbag to take us the rest of the way here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have new listeners every single day, so if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can always put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji prior to your submission, and then we can get your question answered.
Yeah. So this is going to be a pretty quick mailbag. If we don't get some more questions, we do have a super chat down here from Raymond Harton. So we'll kick things off with that.
Appreciate you, Raymond. Thank you for doing a full segment on the Sorsby, Texas Tech topic so we can turn the page.
Yeah, we felt like it needed a full segment to just kind of go over everything. It was just a wild turn of events, like back and forth. And I'm glad his specific situation is behind us, but I don't think this issue overall is behind us. I don't think the fallout for Texas Tech should be over now because of this. When you do the right thing for the wrong reasons, I'm not willing to say all is forgiven, because you're not really asking for forgiveness. Nothing about what Texas Tech has done has been our bad. You know what, guys? We really wanted to win this year. We really thought we really thought he was a key to it. And, we lost our way. Well, you know what, guys? I get it, man. My bad. Our bad. You're bad. We're all good. Let's move forward. But even now they're like, hey, we did the right thing. We didn't do anything wrong. It's like, well, okay. Then that tells me you haven't learned any kind of lessons, which means I want no part of playing you in the future. That's kind of where it is.
100%.
Yeah. Let's stay on that theme and go with JP Buellsfeld here.
How do you feel Notre Dame would have handled the Brendan Sorbsby situation on day one?
With the track record that Notre Dame has as an institution, I don't think there's any chance in the world that they would have done what they did. I think they would have said, hey, listen, we're going to get you the help you need. You can go through the route with the NCAA all you want, but the reality is, buddy, you're not going to play for us. And how do I know that? They suspended Everett Golson for an entire season the year after he led Notre Dame to the national championship game because he cheated on a test. They suspended Kavari Russell and Ishaq Williams and I believe Kendall Moore, 2 starters off the 2014 team because they had a girl help them write a paper. Notre Dame found out about it. They self-reported and suspended the players on their own without anyone telling them what to do. And why I hate the NCAA is because instead of saying, hey, you know what? You guys found this out. You guys dealt with it. All good. They then went and tried to take away their wins from the 2012 and 2013 season. This is why the NCAA sucks. This is why I don't have sympathy for the NCAA overall. But just because I feel that way doesn't mean that every decision that goes against them should have gone against them. But the track record of how Notre Dame would have handled this, and I can only go off the track record, is that there's no way they would have allowed a kid like that to play. Now, in this world where, Notre Dame can make $30 million next year if they make a run in the playoffs, maybe they sell their soul. But wouldn't you thought that they would have done that in 2013 after coming off a title game and you got your young, talented quarterback? Don't you think? Oh, and by the way, they also suspended DeVarce Daniels in 2014 as well. So there's a track record for Notre Dame of saying, yeah, we're not going to tolerate that. And I would argue that cheating on a test is not nearly as egregious to the game. It's egregious to the academic integrity of the institution. And back when people actually cared about cheating in school and stuff like that, before you had AI writing papers for you and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, how do they handle? I think that's a great comparison, because cheating in school does what? If you don't deal with it, it does what? It undermines the integrity of the entire, what's the word I'm looking for here, Trev? Like the entire, we're an academic school. We believe in having an elite education, and this completely undercuts the fabric of the trustworthiness of a Notre Dame education. Oh, I can't trust your kids anymore. You let kids cheat in school and you do nothing about it. We got to deal with this harshly. Everett suspended for a year. DeVarce suspended for a year. Eshak suspended for a year. Kavari Russell suspended for a year. Kendall Moore suspended for an entire year. And it's not institution I was looking for. It's something bigger than that. It's just what makes us us. The whole soul of our institution is that we value this, and it's gone if we don't deal with this. It undermines everything that we stand on if we just brush that under the rug because they're good football players. So, yeah, I think that it's fair to say that Notre Dame's track record in that regard would be that if they found out about Brendan Sorbsby, mission's a good one, Justin. If they found out Brendan Sorbsby had done this, that does to the football program what cheating on tests did to the academic mission, the academic foundation, the heart and soul of who you say you are as an academic institution. It does the same thing to your football program. So based on Notre Dame's track record, I think it's very safe to say that Notre Dame would have suspended him for the year and not have his back while suing the NCAA in the same way. Hey, look, we're going to support this kid. We're going to get him the help. We have nothing to do with the suit that he's making. He's not going to play for us. He can sue all he wants in the NCAA. He's not going to play for us. So after he's done suing for the NCAA, we want to help the kid get out of this. But if he chooses to sue to also transfer somewhere else because we're not going to take him, that's not on us, but he's not going to play at University of Notre Dame. That's exactly how that goes. That's how that should have been. That's how Notre Dame would have handled it. And I'd like to think other people would have handled it that way as well. I'd like to think that. But let's be honest. Texas Tech is not the only school in the country that would have done the exact same thing that they did. Let's be real about that. Somebody would have. There's plenty of people that have no morals whatsoever. I mean, what about Kirby Smart's history dealing with things where people are putting their lives at risk driving 100 miles an hour makes you think he would draw the line at gambling? He lost a player lost his life speeding, and Kirby still hasn't put the crackdown on that.
The argument that I would make for this is I don't even know if Brendan Sorsby has a day one at Notre Dame. If Texas Tech was honest in running a background check on him,
yeah.
If Notre Dame did that, I don't even know if Notre Dame even tries to get him in the portal.
If they would have found out. I mean, that's the thing about these portal things is how long you don't have a lot of time. You don't have 6 months to do a background check. You got a month. So I'll even there, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But to your point, if there was a hint of that, Notre Dame would have brought him in. You're spot on that. Spot on. But
yeah.
Am I wrong, Trev? There's other schools that would have done exactly what Texas Tech did.
100%.
That doesn't get Texas Tech off. It's simply saying there's a lot of people screaming loud that I'm like,
That's all we've seen this offseason in college football. It's a lot of finger pointing. It's like, well, look what you're doing. It's like, brother, you guys do the same thing. Like, you got Pete Golding calling out people for tampering. It's like, okay.
This is really funny. I heard nobody went to Sorsby's birthday party. Little draft day reference there. Very well done. Appreciate that, Donnie Flamingo. Appreciate that very much. I want to just stay on some of this Texas Tech stuff for now, Trev. We got one from Jay Melvin.
Brian, just how much respect have you lost for Joey McGuire this past week? His quote, "At least we were not murdering anybody," end quote, is embarrassing. He needs to shut his potty mouth, both him and the Texas Tech loser fans.
Trev, if you'd have told me 2 weeks ago, could you lose respect for Joe McGuire? I'd have been like, no, come on, guy. How can I possibly lose that much respect for him? Then this happened, and I'm like, wow, there was a lower level for Joey McGuire. So, yeah, I lost even more respect, and Jay Melvin, I didn't have much to begin with. That was one of the dumb. I mean, it's like, I know why they do it, because their fans are going to eat it up. Their fans are going to accept whatever is said. And let's be real. If something happened to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman came out and said, hey, this is what's going on, a lot of us Notre Dame fans are like, Marcus Freeman said this, so, hey, jump on board. That's the nature of fandom. That's who they were speaking to. Our fans and our donors. That's the only people he was talking to. It's the only person Cody Campbell was talking to that entire time. He didn't care about us. It was that. But come up with something better. Like, lie better. Like, not only, it's one thing to lie, it's another thing to suck at it. Like, and he sucks at it. It's one thing to talk trash on Notre Dame. It's another thing to make stupid arguments while doing so. So, yeah, just lie better. You're a clown. If you're going to be a clown, at least be good at being a clown. Is that too much to ask? If you're going to lie to me, at least make it like, I don't know, something that kind of isn't stupid. Give me something, I mean, A-Rod, when he went to the Rangers, at least gave us a lame, at least hey, look, I really am looking forward to, building up the Rangers. Dude, you took the money. You went from the best team in the AL West to the worst team in the AL West. You took the money. You don't want to say that, so you got to come up with a lie. Okay, that's a believable lie. No one believes it, but at least you didn't insult me enough to say a dumb lie that is just like, come on, bro. Come on. He didn't even give us that. At least it ain't murder or beating somebody. That's the standard for your program. As long as you don't murder someone or beat a woman, you can play for us. Interesting. It's one way to go, I guess. Taking a page from the Kirby Smart book, I guess. I don't know, man. Sure, works for Kirby. Well, it worked for Kirby because Kirby has 2 titles. So they'll let him say whatever he wants to say. You have one Big 12 title and then you scored as many points as the all-star IB team of me, Trevor, Tommy Guns. You scored as many offensive points in the playoffs as our IB all-star football team scored in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
0. I mean, look, I get Oregon's logo as 0, but you didn't have to take it to heart and put a 0 up on the board. You could have done something different than that. Geez Louise, man.
Yeah.
Tulane and James Madison scored more points than you in the playoffs last
year. Yeah. Yeah. Dude's just a clown, and he's been digging himself a deeper grave since the start of this offseason, man. It's such a low bar to say at least we're not murdering somebody. And even then, if Cody Campbell paid him millions of dollars, you try to find a way to say that it was self-defense. Like, let's be real about that. That's where Texas Tech is.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. Insured by Big said, he said in the chat, it's funny, I got to respond. He goes, unfortunately, have you seen the politicians that people choose to vote for? Ha ha, people believe anything these days. And this is where I got to say that you're wrong, Insured by Big. People do not believe anything that people are telling them. They only believe the things that their tribe says. Anything that the other side is saying is always a lie. I'm messing with you a little bit, but that is the sad thing. It's either right or it's wrong. And it doesn't matter if it's your team or the other team. It's either right or wrong. Brian Kelly did things that I would hammer another team's coach for. So you know what I did when he was at Notre Dame? Once you kind of learn who he is, you hammer him for it too. It's unpopular. People don't like you. People still hate me because of it. Even though I was proven right, there's still people that hate me because I was hard on Brian Kelly. Okay, fine. I'll take that. I'll own that. Because if kissing Brian Kelly's butt is what's going to make you like me, I don't want you to like me. Right is right and wrong is wrong. So if something that somebody else does is wrong, then you better darn well sure feel that way when your team does it. But unfortunately, when it comes to sports, we don't have that. Or politics in a lot of ways, we don't have that anymore. That's gone. That's gone. To a degree, I will say this. In my state, for example, we kicked out 6 incumbent state senators in the primary. You've seen some Republican, senators get losing their primaries. You saw college football as a whole stand up and say no more. And I want to point this out. What we're seeing here, and I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, whatever. Here's my point. This is what happens when we, the people, remember that we, the people, are in control of this. We as fans actually can do something. I didn't think we could. But when we stood up and said, nope, we're not accepting that, when the rest of college football united around something and said, nope, not okay, something happened. In the state of Indiana, the Republican senators in the state of Indiana weren't doing what we, the people, wanted them to do. So you know what we did? We booted them out. You know what the next group of people are going to do? What we told them to. Because we've set a precedent that if you don't do what we say we want you to do, boom, you got to go. So I'm actually kind of encouraged by some of this stuff. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's just, look, this is the power we, the people, have. There's over 300 million of us. When we actually say no more, they'll listen. If you don't want college football to be what it is, stop watching. And if you're not willing to stop watching, then stop complaining. If you don't like, it kills me every year. Congress has an 18% approval rating, yet 90% of incumbents will get voted back in. That's on us, y'all. That's not on it. That's on us. College football's broken. Okay, cool. What did you say when your team did that? Well, that was different. Then you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem.
100%.
So, yeah, that's kind of, yeah. That's part of the problem. And Big, I know that's your point, man. I was having some fun with you. Lighten up, brother. I was having some fun with you. But we got another one from Jay Melvin kind of along this topic as well, Trev.
Brian, was the Texas Tech PR run one of the worst PR campaigns you've ever seen? The 22 minutes video Texas Tech put out was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen, and Cody Campbell whining on X was funny.
Yeah, I called it a hostage video, bro. I mean, that's kind of what that was. You were not speaking from your heart. You were saying what you needed, that you were told to say. That's why I called it that. That was not a, hey, I'm on here. I'm being treated nicely. They're taking good care of me. Yeah, that was a hostage video, bro. That was not a honest talk. That was a holy crap, we're in trouble. We got to say what we got to say. That's what that was.
The issue wasn't the PR campaign. It was the fact that guys like Cody Campbell and Joey McGuire didn't listen to their PR team. I can't believe that the PR campaign was to flood social media with more self-incriminating evidence. There's no way that any sort of and if that's who Cody Campbell is giving millions of dollars to, then you can give me those millions of dollars to also run your PR into the ground. That's just, it was so bad. And it was so obvious. Like I said earlier, it was like that little kid that keeps coming up with excuses for why he did the bad thing after he got caught. That's where this is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, it was.
From Time Cone, is DJ McKinney really an upgrade over Christian Gray at cornerback?
I want to say something real quick to Time Cone if you're in the chat. Are we saying this correctly? Is this Time Cone or like Tim E. Cone? Can you help me? That's been bothering me lately. Are we getting this right? So if you're listening, could you maybe give us a little bit of a helper here on whether or not we're saying that correctly? If it's like Tim E. Cone or Tim E. Cone, or is it Time Cone? I just want to make sure we're not saying it wrong. So if you're still listening, and I hope you are, could you give us a little assist there, please? That would be very, very nice. I'd appreciate
Timmy
that.
Sone.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I want to get it right.
Yeah,
I want to get it right. That'd be very, very nice. All right, Jay, is DJ McKinney an upgrade over Christian Gray? It depends on which version of DJ McKinney we get, to be honest with you. If we get 24 version of DJ McKinney, I'd say he is an upgrade over Christian Gray for this reason, Trev. He's more steady. DJ McKinney's best games are not as good as Christian Gray's best games. When Christian Gray is locked in, he's a top 10 cornerback. He's a day 2 draft pick. And that's not just my opinion. I mean, I've talked to NFL people. I've talked to coaches. I've talked to people that will tell you the same thing. The maddening thing and what drives people crazy is he's so inconsistent. But when he's locked on, he's very good.
Locked on and healthy.
And the problem is he hasn't been that. DJ McKinney is a much more steady player. But the other part of it is it's not so much about whether or not he's better than Christian Gray. It's what is the lineup that allows us to have the best lineup? Is it DJ McKinney at nickel and then Christian Gray just doing Christian Gray things on the outside? Is it Christian at nickel where maybe he can take more chances and risks? And then you have DJ outside. I think that's really what it came down to. It wasn't so much that DJ McKinney is an upgrade over Christian Gray. It's more of that the trio of Leonard Moore in the boundary, Christian Gray in the slot, and DJ McKinney in at the field is the best unit that they feel they can put on the field. I think that's more of where they're coming from. It's a better fit for what they're trying to do. Chris Ash wants to play more cover 3, more cover 4. A 6'2" long rangy kid like that is an even better fit there. That's kind of where I'm at on that one.
So I viewed that question too. It's not about being an upgrade. It's how do you fit them all on the field at the same time. It's not DJ McKinney isn't coming in to put Christian Gray permanently on the bench.
Yeah. And he answered it as time cone. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Also, Swanton Bombs in the chat right now. Wanted to welcome him to the message board. He's a new premium member of the message board. So thank you very much for that. Let's get to some more questions here, Trev. Thank you for that time cone. Now we don't have to feel weird because sometimes it's like, okay, we're just going to keep saying this until we're told it's not right. But we want to be right. So we appreciate that letting us know if we're not getting it right. Albert McKinney is Pouncy kid from South Florida. I don't know that I want to answer that question, Albert, because I don't know what some people view as South Florida or not. So I learned this when Ryan Roberts worked for me. I was telling how I recruited Central Jersey. There's a school literally in the center of the state of New Jersey. And he goes, there's no such thing as Central Jersey. I said, well, yeah, it is. I mean, look at the map. He goes, no, it's North Jersey or South Jersey. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's like, but okay, I could say, well, yeah, there is Central Jersey. Look at them. Yeah, but I'm not from there. If that's what the people think, that's what the people think, right? So I don't want to say yes. And you're like, well, Orlando's not, he's from Central Florida. He's from the city where the University of Central Florida is located. So I don't know what you consider Orlando, but that's basically where he's from, is the Orlando area. So if you consider that South Florida, then the answer is yes. If you don't consider that South Florida, then the answer is no. But other than that, I really don't know. He's from Winter Park. I don't know how to answer that question. You tell me. So yeah, you tell me. Is that South Florida, Central Florida? Yeah.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, out of the Notre Dame DBs, Miami is after in 27 and 28. Who do you like more, Dante Wright or Amir Sears?
So I haven't seen Amir Sears yet. I haven't seen him yet. I know Dante Wright's really good. I haven't seen Amir Sears yet, so I can't answer that question, Jay Melvin. I get a lot of questions on 28. I haven't watched a lot of 28 recruits. I've watched the quarterbacks they've offered. I've watched the DNs because they're local. I've seen some kids. I've seen Zane Jernigan. Guys that have visited, some of those guys I've watched, but not all. I'll move on hard to 28 after the 27 class is wrapped up. So probably late June, early July is when I'll start really diving into the film of the 28 kids. So I can't answer that one. I can say Dante Wright's very good. I haven't seen Amir Sears.
From Chris Ayers, how important are the Kia brothers to the 2027 linebacker depth, and do we trust in their ability?
I can't say trust in their ability. Sure. I think they've got talent. The issue with Keanu is Keanu can't stay healthy. So I don't trust him as a player because he can't stay healthy. When he's out there, he's a pretty good player. I mean, he can help you. He can be a rotation guy. With Ko'o, I like him. My question is he a starter or is he a really good rotation player? That's the question I have. And it's early yet. He's a redshirt freshman. And the other thing to consider is I don't have a lot of a reference point. This is why I struggle talking about Ko'okia, because as I've said before, there wasn't a lot of high school film that was available for him. So I don't really have a strong opinion of what he was in high school. And then when I watch him at Notre Dame, it's like, well, this is a freshman version, and we don't get to see a ton of them. So the things we've seen, he's impressed us, Trev. We talked about that the first practice. You could watch Ko'o move around, and you're like, this kid can move. He did well in the blue gold game. He did well in the jersey scrimmage. So there's some tools to work with there. How talented is he? It's hard because I've seen so much more of Thomas Davis on film. I've seen so much more of Jacoby Clapper on film and guys like that. Where Ko'o, I just don't have as much of a reference point. But from what I have seen, I think there's something to work with there. I just don't know if he's like, is he Jaden Ausberry, or is he like a step below and he's like a good rotation player but not quite that starting caliber? That it's a little bit more of a question.
Yeah, I think that's fair. How important are they to the depth? I mean, important on the defensive side, very important on the special team side. Absolutely trust in their ability from what we saw from them in the spring. But I don't know if Notre Dame, with how they've been recruiting the position, is ever going to be in a position where they have to rely on either one of the Kia brothers to like start. Like, hey, he's got to pan out and be our starting linebacker this year, or we're in trouble. I just don't know if they'll ever be in that spot.
Yeah, and the question that Chris followed up with just real quickly asked if they played a good level of high school football, and the answer is yes. I think they're from Panaho, correct, where Manti played? I could be saying that wrong, but they're from the same high school Manti Te'o played at. So, yeah, they go to a really, really good high school in Hawaii. And there's good football in Hawaii.
From DJ, what is the number of Irish defensive linemen are you very comfortable with if they start?
Oh, man. That's a pretty long list, DJ. Let me actually pull up the depth chart here real quick, and we'll actually kind of have a little conversation about that, Trev. So if I were to say, let's pull this up in the chat here real quick, Trev. So just give me a second, and I'm going to pull this up. And let's go here. Let's go depth chart here. All right. So, no, that's the magazine depth chart. Let's go post-spring depth chart. Where is the post-spring depth chart, Trevor? Why can't I find it? That's summer roster. Here it is, post-spring depth chart. No, that's not my updated one. Where is my post-spring depth chart, Trevor? See, as soon as I want to bring some up in the show, there it is. Post-spring depth chart 2026. So let's pull up the defensive line and have a conversation about this, because there's some players there. So here we go. Share that, and we're good to go. So if you look at this here, Trevor Trowbridge, I will say, let's go defensive end first. And I'm going to take this question down so we can look at it. So obviously right now, who do I trust? The question was, am I comfortable with if they start? Boubacar Traore, I'm comfortable with he starts. Bryce Young, I'm comfortable if he starts. Keon Keeley, I'm comfortable if he starts to a certain degree. That's 3 for sure. I can't say that I'm comfortable with Logan Thomas, because I don't know that Logan Thomas has the size and strength to be an every down end. Am I comfortable with Logan in a rotation spot and a starter in the sub packages like the nickel or the dime? Yes. Am I comfortable with him as a full-time starter where he's going to play 40-plus snaps a game and play a lot of first and down snaps? No, I'm not. Ronnie Dunham, am I comfortable with him starting? For a freshman, yes, I'd be comfortable with him starting. Ebenezer, not yet. Because Rodney's more advanced technically. He's a little stronger. Ebenezer's a lot closer as a freshman than I thought he'd be, Trev. But I don't know that I could kind of put him there just yet. Rotation guy, yes. Joe Reef and Dom Hulak, rotation guys, yes. Starter, not yet. But I would say I'm probably closer to feeling comfortable with Joe Reef than I am Dom Hulak right now. Joe impressed me in the blue gold game in the jersey scrimmage, Trev. I liked what I saw from Joe. Not quite ready yet, but he made really nice strides, just filling out his frame, getting bigger and stronger. So right now I'd say 4 ends for sure as starters to varying degrees. 2 players I really like as rotation guys, but not quite starters. What say you at defensive end?
Same page. I'm going Boubacar, Bryce, Keon, and Rodney Dunham. Logan Thomas needs to get a little bit bigger to be an every down end, and I got to see him stay healthy to be an every down defensive end. It's another piece of this as well. So that's I'm with you with defensive end.
All right. And let's go D tackle. Armel Mukam, yes. Francis Brew, yes. Jason Onye, yes. Tion Gray, yes. Elijah Hughes, yes. 5 for sure yeses. With Cole Mullins, I'm close to saying yes, but the questions I have are injury history, and then can he hold up as an every down guy? He's not in the same boat as Logan Thomas, but he's kind of borderline there. I thought he had a very good spring, and I thought he had a good spring last year as well. So I'm close with Cole Mullins, but can he hold up, the way that, look, we've seen guys his size hold up. Donovan Heinisch is smaller than him. Howard Cross is, weighed about the same as him, maybe a little less. Christopher Burgess, not yet, but I'm very close. I just need to see. He's played one spring as a D tackle. He had been a D end and a middle linebacker in high school and played D end at Notre Dame for most of the year. He's really in his first year. He's still learning about that. Cisse just committed, by the way. So Abraham Cisse just committed. So we're going to wrap up the mailbag here, and we'll go live here in a few minutes and break that down. But that's where I'm at on the D tackle position.
Yep, D tackle, I'm with you completely. I was thinking off the top of my head, probably somewhere around 9 to 10, and that floats in between guys like Cole Mullins and Logan Thomas and things like that. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you completely.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry. Real quick. Yeah, we'll have a story and stuff out. We got to finish the show here real quick first, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that one. Trev, let's see if there's any more that we definitely got to get up. Some of you others, these other questions, we'll have to get to these later. We're gonna have to wrap this up and kind of get rocking here real quick on a commitment video. So Trev and I are going to end the mailbag now. I'm going to set a show for Abraham Cisse committing. We'll start here in 10 minutes at 4:10. We're going to go live. So if you're with us now, 10 minutes, we're going to be breaking down the commitment of Abraham Cisse to Notre Dame. So Trev, why don't you take us out of here real quick there, my dude?
Big news. Make sure you guys tune into that show. For this show, we are done for the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with it. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sounds like we'll be seeing you guys here very shortly, here in about 10 minutes. So for Brian, for Trevor, we'll see you very, very, very shortly on the Irish Breakdown podcast.